Race fans, the 100% Cup Series welcomes you to Martinsville Speedway for the penultimate race in the season, and the final race in the round of 8. I'm Andre Graham Bush, joined alongside, for the first time, two of the best in the business, Mason Heimbaugh and Chris Curtis joining me in the booth, and of course, Carlos DaCosta pushing the buttons, bringing all the action to your screens. Boys, it's going to be one heck of a race. We're here at a short track, and with the point situation coming into this race, which we're going to take a look at, what we're going to see is that with the exception of Jonathan Delaney, Adam Benefield, Bryce Nixonbaugh, and Cam Stone, the other four drivers are pretty much, barring some extravagant circumstance, in a must-win situation. I mean, 26 points on the bubble. 26 cars is about how many cars we get to enter every single race. So really, these guys are in a must-win. What do you think it's going to take here at Martinsville?
Well, personally, I think it's it's going to be very interesting to see what these guys are going to be able to do here at a short track, given that we've seen primarily traditional ovals as well as a little bit of road courses at the Roval, as well as I believe it was, I think it was Road of America. I'm not too sure. Anyway, we have some interesting circumstances here, and for a lot of these drivers that are on that bubble, primarily Sean O'Brien Jr. as well as Brandon Pierce, those two drivers primarily are going to be the ones that, like you said, Andre, are going to be the guys that are going to have to win today's race in order to stay in contention for the rest of the playoffs and be able to possibly win the series here. But they still, even after getting out of that bubble, they have to work their way past Jonathan Delaney and Adam Benefiel, who are currently leading in points, as well as Bryson Hickson-Baugh and Cameron Stone. All four drivers excellent in this series. So I'm very excited to see what's going to happen here at Martinsville, and I think everyone else at home is going to be as well.
I'm excited for the desperation that's going to come out later in this race. Martinsville typically is a bit of a chaotic track, to say the least, and depending on how desperate some of these drivers get to keep themselves in the playoff hunt, it's really going to dictate the pace of which this race goes, especially as we get into the last stage and with not many laps to go.
Absolutely, and you come to a short track like this, and you already think about aggression in any given race. But this race is a little bit more tense for these guys, especially the guys that need to win to get into the playoffs. I think that aggression level is going to be extra high, especially towards the end of the race. You don't want to make your move too early and give the guys time to get back at you. But if we can get to the end of this thing with a lot of cars left on track, these fireworks are going to be on full display, I think. And again, so many talented drivers in this race, so many of them that need to get a win. And then you got a few drivers that aren't in that situation. I think that's going to be fun as well. I mean, Jonathan Delaney, Adam Benefiel, they're locked in. Bryson Hickson-Baugh is guaranteed into the next round based on points alone, as long as nobody pushes him out with a win or anything like that. And then you have Robert Miller. He opted to start at the back of the field tonight, and he told me before the race, hey, we're just going to take it easy today. We're not going to be too aggressive. I'm just going to be turning laps and having fun. I'm not in it for the points. And he also volunteered to be our in-race reporter, so we will be hearing from him later in the race. We'll pull him in during caution, see what he thinks about the track, the race, and whatever else we may find to ask him about. So a big thanks to Robert Miller for volunteering to be the in-race reporter. But yeah, looks like our practice session is winding down. We're going to be gridding just momentarily. Only another minute or two on the clock. Speaking of the grid, why don't we take a run through that? Of course, the 100% Cup Series does run through their qualifying the day before the race, and the pace laps aren't going to be very long, so that's why I want to get through this a little bit earlier. But on the pole today, Cameron Stone. Martinsville is Cam's favorite track without a shadow of a doubt. Every time he comes here, he wants to win just because it's his home track. He's been here in real life so many times, loves racing it on the simulator. And with a pole tonight, he's going to have a good shot at it. Alex Murray, a very strong car from last week, is going to start on his outside there on row 1. Row 2 is going to consist of Dave Fugue and Kevin Steele. And then looking a little further back, 5 and 6 is going to be Jason Taylor and David Duke. 7 and 8 is going to be Dustin Hall and Brandon Pierce. And rounding out your top 10 is going to be Ryan Samuelson and Brian Maybury. I'll hand it off to you there, Mason, for the rest.
And in 11th place, Sean O'Brien Jr. In 12th place, Tyler Pincinel. That's going to be your 6th lineup there. 13th is going to be Randy Drumhiller, and 14th, Alex Princeton on that line there. 15th is Chad Sanner. 16th, Damaris Hickenbottom. 17th is Preston McRae. 18th, Bryson Hickson-Baugh. 19th, Jonathan Delaney. 20th, RJ Root. And last but not least, Robert Miller, our race reporter for today.
And what a star-studded field that is as the practice session comes to a close. You can see the cars gridding up on the front straightaway there. Just a short pacing session around. You can see there's our pole sitter on track. And I think the key for a lot of these guys is going to be survival. You come to a short track and you have to make sure your car is in one piece by the time you get to the end of it, and that can be hard to do. In the real life Xfinity race today, Dale Jr. was comparing these short tracks to bumper car races, and it's very true. Sometimes you get into the corner and you just have this closing rate to the car in front of you. Maybe you get a little bit of wheel hop, and a little bit of contact, bumping and rubbing may be inevitable, but these guys are going to do their best to keep their cars in top shape. As you saw by the race analysis earlier on in the broadcast there on the corner of your screen, they do have a tire limit tonight. It is 12 sets of tires, which sounds like a lot, but we are at a track where we get a lot of cautions on average. The historical precedent here is that we're probably going to see upwards of 5 or 6 at least. And that's going to be many opportunities to come down pit road and get fresh tires. And they're going to mean so much here, guys. Tires are going to be everything for these guys. The corners are so sharp and so flat. You want every ounce of grip that you could possibly get on that thing. And so they're going to have to be very careful not to use up all their tires too quickly. But at the same time, you got to know when to hold them, when to fold them. But looks like the lights are off on the pace car, but we're going to go around one more time. So just one short pacing session around. You on the outside of our full sitter currently. Man, this is the calm before the storm, I would say, guys.
Yeah, I think you're right. The biggest thing, you talk about the tires. Tires are going to wear faster than fuel goes in this race as well, especially with all the cautions that we may or may not see in this race. But there's a reason we got 12 sets. The tires are going to wear fairly quickly, especially with the corners on this track, and you really got to keep an eye out behind you, in front of you, left and right, because you never know when somebody's going to make a bit of an aggressive move and cause another one of those cautions, maybe collect you. It's actually an advantage, I think, for John Delaney, Robert Miller, and Bryson Hixenboss sitting at the back of the grid right now as we start up green flag. They are in a spot where they can really adjust to everything that happens in front of them, try to keep themselves out of danger.
Yeah, absolutely. And Cameron Stone taking the green flag with an impressive launch in front of the rest of the field. Looking quite impressive already. He's got almost a second gap in front of second place Kevin Steele in the number 24 machine. Behind Kevin Steele, the 37 of Jason Taylor is following him in third place. And my oh my, do we have quite the lineup of drivers following in behind them and doing quite well. I was kind of worried about a little bit before the race, kind of how these guys would handle just in general this short track. It's very challenging. It can be quite difficult, but these guys are doing very, very well, and I think it's very smart for a lot of these guys just take it single file, because at the end of the day, you don't want to try and overtake too early on in this race. You're going to abuse those tires, you're going to abuse your fuel, and 500 laps, that's a long time to go, and I think these guys are going to want to save that as much as they possibly can. Cameron Stone, on the other hand, I think he's just enjoying the clean air and letting that car just rip some laps.
Absolutely. And I've always made the joke that unless you find a time machine on the backstretch that takes you straight to lap 500, you can't win on the first lap. And these guys know that. They got to be patient. They got to keep their car in one piece. And so they kind of single filed out relatively quickly, with the exception of just a couple battles going on there behind Cameron Stone and that Biscuitville Ford. And again, it all comes back to just trying to survive, taking it easy for now. As the race goes on, that's when you start to take a few more risks, be a little bit more aggressive, because you're getting closer, the win is more realistic. The moves you make become more important the later into the event. Yeah, so right now, early impressions, though, that number 57 is absolutely on rails. He's pulled away nearly half a straightaway and 3/4 of a turn from his teammate, Kevin Steele, who's currently running second. And every single lap, that gap is only extending. Again, this is a track where Cam really wants to win, but also one where he might be driving with a bit of a vengeance here, guys, because last season, in this very race of the season, the final Martinsville race, he led upwards of, I want to say, over 300 laps, and he spun by himself within the last 10 laps of the race and gave it away. So probably trying not to replicate that mistake this year. So far, so good.
Absolutely, yeah, the final lap jitters, I think it gets to a lot of drivers, myself included. You think you have it in the bag, and then come the final 10, 5 laps, and you start to feel a little uncertain about yourself, or maybe you're just the car just doesn't feel quite the same, and that's usually the case as you start to wear those tires down, and the car just doesn't quite handle the same as when you started the race. And I think it gets the best of a lot of people, but Cameron Stone looking absolutely impressive here. But speaking of impressive, David Fuge Jr. with a quite the impressive attempt at trying to take a pass at third place Brandon Pierce in the number 38 machine. I saw it on my screen there for just a moment. And these guys here in third and fourth place, Brandon Pierce, David Fuge Jr., David Fuge and Jason Taylor. These two drivers here, they're duking it out, trying to make some passes here. Only a lap 11 of 500. I'm quite surprised to see that early on in this race here, guys.
The top movers and shakers right now, Raymond Root, is in the 11th spot. He started in 19th. He's been ahead a pretty good move. And then you see Robert Miller and Bryson Hixenbaugh. They've actually moved up into Hixenbaugh into the top 10, and Miller sitting in 13th. So there is some movement in the middle to the back of the pack as some of the more experienced guys are working their way through as they're trying to gauge how safe everybody's looking to be and taking those positions when they can get them.
And look at this. Jason Taylor got to the inside of Dave Fuge on the straightaway just at the corner exit. He was able to make the most of it. He got clear of him fairly easily, and now the battle doesn't end for Dave Fuge because he's still getting challenged by Brian Mabry, and I believe that's Tyler Pinsonneau behind them. Great run so far for Tyler in that number 2 machine. He's running 7th currently. But man, look at that. The number 3 sending it in deep, just getting on the bumper. And that's what we call applying the pressure, boys. The more you make that car in front of you nervous, the more afraid he is, the more he looks at his mirror, the better a chance it is that he's going to make a mistake. He's going to slide up the track, maybe overdrive, and then you're going to be able to just drive right around him.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that you just have to really work on as a driver is just being able to put the pressure on the driver in front of you. It's something that doesn't always come naturally to some drivers. It takes some time. But these guys are experts at doing that here. And on my screen here, Tyler Pinsonneau with the pass, and on your screens as well, around the number 3 of Brian Mabry. Absolutely fantastic work there from Tyler, as he's now in 6th position, working his way up to the 14th car, the number 14 car, David Fuge Jr.
As we ride on board for their 3Wide TV multicam, top of your screen, that's Jonathan Delaney working his way through the field. Again, he's locked into Phoenix by virtue of a win, and he's currently trying to run down that number 65, Sean O'Brien Jr., who is, of course, the first driver in need of a win. He's in 5th in points coming into this event. A lot of cars passed. Chris mentioned it just a moment ago that a lot of positions changing hands from the mid to back of the field. And a lot of that due to Robert Miller and John Delaney. I mean, these two have just absolutely sliced their way through the field. We're only 20 laps into this event, and they have gained nearly half of the available positions that they could possibly gain. So incredible driving by them. Hixenbaugh as well, up to 7th now, just behind Pinsonneau. But on your screen right there, we're focusing on Kevin Steele, who is still running 2nd to his teammate there, Cameron Stone. But guys, he's going to have company before too long. I've been watching that 38, and slowly but surely, he's been reeling him in.
I'm noticing as well the difference in speed between what Cameron Stone is doing through the corners and what Kevin Steele. There's about a 5 to 7 mile an hour difference between what Cameron Stone's doing, getting about 72, 74 miles an hour. I'm seeing Kevin Steele go as low as 65 to 68 miles an hour go around those corners. And it doesn't sound like a lot, but at a spot where it's a short track and you can rack up the laps pretty quickly, it does make a pretty big difference. And it's been able to put Cameron Stone about a half straightaway ahead of what Kevin Steele's doing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Brandon Pierce doing a fantastic job working his way through the field, trying to catch up to that number 24 machine. And as you guys mentioned, it's very, very easy to assume that you're going fast enough around your turn, but it's also very easy to want to put the pressure on someone else and just try and figure out where you can brake a little bit later, maybe go a little bit faster in certain spots of the track. It's a bit of a balanced game, but Brandon Pierce is doing a fantastic job of just trying to read that number 24 machine, figuring out where he can go a little bit faster here. But on our screen, Brian Mabry with a crash.
And that is going to be a no yellow flag. It stays green. At first we thought we were going to get a yellow, but somehow, boys, that stayed green. We had a car completely sideways and stationary in the middle of the straightaway. The iRacing service looked at that and said, hey, let's keep this green flag out. That did check up a large portion of the field, however, including Bryson Hixenbaugh. We were focusing on him a little bit before that happened, and that Lockjaw Lemon Tarts Chevrolet was really closing in on the leaders until that. So now that gives these guys, Brandon Pierce, Kevin Steele, a little bit more of a buffer. We're going to take a look at the replay, top of your screen. You can see, I think that's the number 15, just a little bit too hot on entry. And he got into the quarter panel of the 3, spun him sideways. Great reaction time by the 3. It seemed like as soon as he knew he was not going to be able to save it, he locked it down. I'm sorry, that was the number 10 that got into him. But yeah, great reaction by Brian Mabry. As soon as he knew he couldn't bring that thing around, he had those brakes locked up.
Yeah, I'm honestly very shocked that caution did not come out onto the field. It looks like the field was able to recover relatively quickly, and it doesn't seem that anyone entered into pit road for anything. So I'm honestly curious about the decision for that, if that was just truly just an iRacing decision, hey, let's just keep it going, or if that was a race control decision there. Not really sure what happened there, but yeah, very, very strange that a caution didn't come out here, but also a good thing that we're still racing. Things are still going. We're still moving on the track, and things are looking relatively the same from where we left off the first time, but the field is starting to kind of everyone's starting to be in a lot of, oh, we have a car sideways, the number 14, Dave Fuge Jr., and now we have a yellow flag out on the field. Lap 30 of 500, the first caution of the race today after a seemingly interesting first incident. This will be officially our first caution of this race.
Yeah, that actually is not advantageous to Cameron Stone, who's going to have to get grid up with everybody behind him. And as he had that false caution that we had a little bit ago actually put about a 4.5 second gap between him and Kevin Steele. They're going to get back together here as we get going again. But a good start for Cameron Stone. He's going to have to do that full restart again and get off to a good. Actually, Cameron Stone going into the pits, interestingly enough, this early in the race. Okay.
Yeah, sounds like everybody's making their way down pit road. That's a good call there, Chris. And kind of interesting. I wondered what some of these guys were going to do. I mean, we're at the point in the run where tires are worth it, definitely. But we're also at the point where you could try to stay out, gain some track position. And maybe we're going to have a few guys do that. But I tell you what, those guys who were involved in that first incident are absolutely glad to see this yellow flag. Again, that separation, that false caution, as he called it there, kind of caused, it held these guys back. And really, if this caution hadn't come out, it might have been a game of just riding to the end of the stage where we'd get punched up again, because they just were so far back, it'd be hard to catch up. Also, I want to mention that number 14 who brought out the caution. Boy, was he lucky. He brought that thing around on corner exit, and he just kept the nose off the wall, which at a track as narrow as Martinsville, you don't always do. Usually you spin out here, and you're going to be getting some damage somewhere. 14 kept his nose clean, and he's going to live to race another lap. And there's a lot of speed in that 14, so I don't think he's quite done yet. He might be down, but he is not out. But yeah, I think this restart is going to be even more interesting, guys, than the first initial start, because now we got some heavy hitters that have worked their way towards the front that may be able to challenge Cameron Stone. Jonathan Delaney, Bryson Hixenbaugh, Robert Miller, all these guys have worked their way from the back up to the front, and now they're all going to be going at it for this track position.
Yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting to see what happens here at this restart. This is not a good thing, like Chris said. This is not what we want to see here for Cameron Stone. A restart is definitely not the position that you want to see yourself in when you're the leader of the race, as now he has a handful of very fast drivers in his rearview mirror now, essentially, and I don't think he's going to be able to shake them very easily. Kevin Steele is one of those drivers that I think he's going to have a little bit of struggle with, potentially. Kevin Steele doesn't always have the greatest starts. Cameron Stone seems to have those pretty well down. I think Kevin Steele likes to kind of preserve his car a little bit more. But either way, we still have Bryson Hixenbaugh and Jonathan Delaney in 4th and 5th place, who are also very good at starts. Yeah, I really am going to be paying attention to what the guys are going to do here, as we have 1 lap left to green.
Yeah, we're going to get this race underway very shortly. Looks like the lights are off on the pace car, so we're going to get them doubled up. Kevin Steele on the outside of his Apex teammate Cameron Stone, or at least his Apex teammate for the next 2 races, including this one. They're going to be starting side by side, but Brandon Pierce a little bit closer to the leader now. There's a lot of speed in that car. There was a battle between him and Kevin Steele before that caution came out. The pace car dives down pit road. Cameron Stone waiting for his moment for just the right time. He's going to get on the throttle, checks the field up quite a bit, and man, that did a number on the 38. That is exactly what Cameron Stone had planned. That's going to leave the 38 side by side with the 63. And this kind of poses the question, guys, how do you feel about the high line, especially as this race goes on? Is it viable, and is the rubber relay down going to make it actually maybe a preferred line?
What do you think, Chris?
I'm not a fan of the high line in this particular case, to be honest with you. It kind of gives you a false sense of security that you can be a little more aggressive than you really can on this track. And you can go, yes, a little bit faster, but then you have to find room to dive down inside those corners. Those straightaways, they're not very long on this short track. So you have to get your pass done if you're going to take the high line on those straights, and really don't have the option to take the high line on to pass in the turn. So I don't like that strategy. You're going to see some people try it and test the waters, I think. But with this kind of experienced field, I think some good defense is going to be played in the lower part of those turns, and I don't think we're going to see a lot of passes on that high line.
Yeah, I think Chris hit the nail right on the head there. Obviously we're seeing these guys take the high line going out of the turns into the straightaway. That's to be expected, but going into these turns, you're definitely going to want to prefer to take that low line, sticking as close to the bottom of the track as you possibly can. And if you're trying to overtake on the outside, you might be able to work. But that's only if the driver below you is actually slower than you. And I don't think a lot of these drivers here are going to allow that to happen. All of these guys here are very quick drivers and very skilled at that, as well as in defense. I don't think we're going to see a lot of attempts made on the outside, but if we do, it'll definitely be very exciting to watch.
Watching Kevin Steele, he's getting a little bit closer and keeping that gap between him and Cameron Stone at a survivable level right now. We saw about a 4.5, 5 second gap between him and Cameron Stone before the caution happened. Cameron can't quite shake him to the best of his ability right now. And I think Kevin may have figured out something with that Sunoco 24.
Whoa, the 38. Sorry to cut you off. The 38 gets on the throttle a little too hard. He made hard contact with the outside wall, drops 2 positions, and he's got some damage on the right side of that car.
Yeah, I wonder what happened there with Brandon Pierce. It seemed like he possibly just got a little too close to the wall there. Wonder if he was trying to put the pressure on the number 65 of Sean O'Brien Jr., as he does here going into, I believe this is turn 1, coming out of turn 2. Not able to get quite close enough to stick to the bumper of Sean O'Brien Jr., but very impressive work from Brandon Pierce as he slowly chips away that gap between himself in 5th place.
I think he was trying to be a little bit too aggressive on that outside there, where he was maybe looking to make a pass exactly to our point we just made a little while ago.
Absolutely. And the thing to keep in mind too is Bryson was running that high line, and he ran it for a number of laps, and he was able to get used to it. The 38 got kind of forced up there. He overdrove a little bit, and I think what he found was that there's not quite as much grip as there was down low. He wasn't prepared for that fall off in grip. Got on the throttle just a little bit too early, like you said, and that was all she wrote. But he did a good job keeping it straight, and luckily didn't get ejected off the wall. Sometimes, you get on that wall and it's hard to get off, and then once you finally do, it just completely flings you down to the infield. But that's going to be a bit of a hindrance for him in this state. He's going to have to try to regain this drive position. And there we go. There's Dave Fugue again, this time in the exit of the corner, and again, no damage. He's able to keep... Oh, my goodness. Okay, I saw him backing up, and there was traffic coming. I got a little concerned there for a minute, but he was able to keep it out of their way. The pace car comes on track just behind Dave Fugue. And that's the thing, man. Sometimes you see this, especially in an open setup league, but you just get the car where it's fighting you all the time. And Dave Fugue obviously struggling to keep the wheel underneath him as he comes through the corner and loose in the middle. That's what tells me that Fugue has a setup that maybe is just a little bit too loose, because you don't see that very often at Martinsville. When you see somebody get loose, it's either into the corner or out. But if you're getting loose in the center, that car's evil.
Yeah, you definitely got to be a little bit tighter on this track, a little more careful in the corners, be able to have the car do what you want it to do, even if it's to sacrifice a little bit of speed coming out of those corners. That's going to be your best friend. Too loose is a problem at most tracks, but especially a short track like Martinsville, where things can go real south in a real big hurry.
Yeah, it's short tracks are it's it's one of those things where you have to be extra careful when you're behind the wheel of these cars. It's very tricky. Like you guys said, going into the turns, it's very easy to overestimate how fast you're going into the turn and find yourself either into the wall or hit the brakes a little bit too much and find yourself spinning. But going into the straightaways, that's also a tricky game as well, because like you guys said as well, towards the bottom of the track, the grip there just isn't quite the same. And if you're finding yourself having to overcorrect or just correct your car in general, down on those non-grippy parts of the track, if you will, if you over accelerate your car, you're gonna find yourself spinning. It's a very tricky balance to maintain, and these short tracks can be very unforgiving, and that's why I kind of love these tracks. They're very fun to watch, and very interesting to see how these drivers react to these tracks and how they're able to just maintain themselves throughout the race. It can be quite difficult for some drivers, I think.
If you like a mental chess game, you come to short tracks, because you see a lot of that, not just in figuring out how much you can get away with from an aggression standpoint before it comes back to bite you, but also you're in limbo as you're trying to figure out what everybody around you is working on doing against you as well. So it makes things a little bit more fun, a lot more close contact, and not as much room for error as you're going to find on the super speedways, your Daytona and the like. So it's a fun experience.
And now look at this. This is an interesting development. Cameron Stone looks like he's choosing the high line for this restart. He's not chose the high line yet. He's had 2 restarts, and he chose the inside both times. Now he's given Kevin Steele the bottom lane, and I got to wonder what the thought process is there. Maybe he saw something on the last restart that told him, you know what, maybe I'd have been better off up there. Regardless, we're going to find out. Pace car heads down pit road, and Cameron Stone awaits the proper moment. The question is, when is the proper moment? You got to get a jump on these guys. You can't do the same thing every time. There he goes on the loud pedal, and he's going to leave these guys side by side behind him. Looks like Kevin Steele and the number 63 of Bryson Nixonbaugh are going to battle it out, as well as Jonathan Delaney in this 3-car gaggle, if you will, just battling it out. Bryson seems to be working that high line better than a lot of these guys. Something about that setup is really preferring that high line. He's able to kind of hold his own and run similar lap times. I think the downside of that, though, is here at a short track, you go to an intermediate, and sometimes the high line actually saves tires because you're not turning the wheel as hard. You got more banking up there that rotates your car for you. But at a short track like this that's so flat, all it comes down to is the outside is a longer way around the track. You still got to crank on the wheel. The turning radius is just about the same. Only difference is you're turning for longer and you're wearing your tires out. So here, you really want to get to the bottom if conservation is your game. But we're on lap 55. These guys just took tires not too long ago. And that puts Bryson in a situation where he can run the top and not really worry about conservation, because really, you're just about halfway through the stage almost. And all these guys should be good on tires at the end. As Kevin Steele goes way wide, the number 9 tries to take advantage, slide down to the bottom of the quarter panel, but isn't quite able to get there. And this battle's going to continue.
To your point about the fact that we're on lap 55 halfway through this first stage, we're also averaging a caution every 20-25 laps or so. So I think Cameron Stone maybe just trying to get as far out as he can and avoid the traffic behind him and make it so he's comfortable. We know how comfortable he is on this track. He's showing it every single lap he runs here. So I think, honestly, it's a decent play to be a little bit faster now, maybe sacrifice a little bit of the tires because he knows he's going to get a full set likely before this is done. And we have another caution right here.
And Tyler Pincinel in the number 19 machine with another incident here. Let's see if we can get a replay of that here on screen for everyone to watch. And here we go. We have a replay on our screen here, looking at Tyler Pincinel in the number 2. We can see here as he just goes sideways on his own. And like we said, we've been mentioning this already right before. It's very easy to let that car just get loose on the outside of these turns. Very easy to just get on that loud pedal just a little bit too early, and there you go, textbook.
And you know what surprises me here is that he took a tow almost immediately. And I gotta wonder if that was a panic reaction, because really, I mean, yeah, he took damage there, but that was nothing. He couldn't limp back to pit road. And now that he's got to wait out that tow clock, laps under caution do count. He may find himself multiple laps down by the time this is done.
Yeah, and we have a few other drivers also in pit road as well. We have Kevin Steele in pit road. We also have Jonathan Delaney. Never mind, did not go into pit road. Kevin Steele, Brian Mabry, Randy Drumhiller, Damaris Hickenbottom, Preston McRae are currently all in pit road. Yeah, I am very, very curious to know why Tyler decided to get towed. A very strange decision. I mean, he could have just stayed out on track, but you know, like you said, Andre, it could have just been a panic kind of impulse move. Not really sure, but we'll see what Tyler's able to do here. Hopefully he's able to recover from that.
Yeah, he's got plenty of time to recover. I mean, again, we're not even at the end of stage one. This is one long race at Martinsville, and it only gets extended by these cautions, which it's good if you're one of the guys that was involved in an incident early on. You got plenty of time. But if you're a guy like Cameron Stone and you're out there leading these laps, all you want to do is get to the end. You want to see this thing go green. You don't want to be stopping and starting, all that kind of thing. I mean, you want to get in a groove is what you want. You want to get in the rhythm, turn your laps, and get to the end as quick as possible when you're that confident in your car. But unfortunately for Cameron, this is not the kind of track where you're really granted the opportunity to get in a rhythm very often. Chris pointed out a minute ago that we're averaging a caution every 20 laps or so, and then boom, just like clockwork, we got another one. So definitely, as far as statistics go, dead on. But also, it kind of is a bad omen for that number 57.
Let's see where Cameron Stone's restart skills weigh against one Bryson Hickenbottom and Jonathan Delaney, who are sitting right behind him. That's going to be my key to watch entering this green flag. That's the two very skilled drivers behind him. Not to take anything away from previous, but those two are a cut above in a lot of cases.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you there, Chris. These three drivers here up in the front of the field are going to be very interesting to watch here, as we only have less than a half a lap to go here before we see the pit car head into pit road, and we see that green flag come out once again here. And there it goes into pit road. These drivers are going to get started here. Ooh. I've been corrected by my producer that I was behind, and I was behind, and I apologize for that.
Yeah, we're all a little behind sometimes. Up front, Bryson is able to hold on to second. Cameron got out to a pretty good jump there, as he has every time. Thing is, I think every caution that comes out, the field's going to get a little bit wiser to the restart strategy of the 57. That's going to be a challenge for Cam to keep it fresh every single restart, get on the throttle somewhere new, and at a different pace, sometimes slow, sometimes fast. But he's got to keep these guys on their toe, because eventually they might catch up and catch on to what he's doing. But Bryson finally up into the top three. He's been racing his way through the field all race long. He's got Jonathan Delaney right behind him, as well as Robert Miller, RJ Root there in fifth. These guys have kind of single filed out, and I think we're seeing a little bit more patience on this restart than the last one. But thing is, I don't think aggression has necessarily been the cause of a lot of our cautions. I think the cause of it has just been how tough of a track Martinsville is, how unforgiving it can be, as you guys mentioned, and being patient's not really going to help that. It's just a matter of getting in a rhythm, and so far they haven't had that chance.
Yeah, exactly. I'm watching the Hickenbottom Stone battle back and forth here. I'm wondering how defensive Cameron Stone's going to be in keeping this lead away from Bryson Hickenbottom. There's about a half second between them, and has been since the restart just about. So I want to see how aggressive Hickenbottom is going to be versus how Cameron Stone's going to react to that. It's becoming a pretty good race 1-2 right now.
Yeah, Bryson Hickenbottom in the 63 currently doing a very excellent job, just kind of chipping away at that gap between himself and Cameron Stone in the 57, closing it down to nearly a half a second gap. It's looking very impressive for Bryson currently, and it's going to be even more interesting what he's going to try and do to be able to overtake Cameron Stone. I'm interested to see if he's going to try and give that 63 a little bit more power coming out of these turns once he's found himself a little bit closer. Man, it's going to be a very interesting fight here for first place, but also slowly working his way up to the top 2 here. Jonathan Delaney in the number 9, up 15 positions from where he started, as well as Bryson Hicksonbaugh. These 2 drivers are just excellent drivers, and I think Cameron Stone is definitely going to be feeling a bit of that pressure here in the next at least 5 laps.
Stone, Hicksonbaugh, Delaney, Miller, Root, and O'Brien. Their last pit lap was lap 31. So they're going to be coming up on tires here, I would assume, at least somewhat quickly. Likely, again, before this stage is done, if we don't see another yellow flag. So that's something to keep an eye on, as we could see a real big shakeup in the last part of this first stage.
We absolutely could. And another thing that I'm thinking about right here is if they were to come down for tires, that might save them the hassle of dealing with cars in front of them, because that's one thing Cameron Stone has not had to fight so far, because we've been getting cautions so frequently. But our leader has not seen a lap car all race long. And usually lap traffic is something that really poses the biggest challenge and the biggest threat to anybody at a short track. You know, you get up in that lap traffic and then you just never escape it. It's just one car after another until the next caution. And so far, it's been really lucky for our leaders. They just haven't had to deal with that. But I think we're going to see some longer green flag runs. You know, usually at these short tracks, cautions tend to come in clusters. You'll see a lot maybe in one stage, and then the next stage goes completely green. So I think we're due for some longer runs. And if that happens, these guys are going to have to think about, you know, do I come down pit road? Do I get tires? Or do I stay out, deal with the traffic, and make sure that I keep this track position?
Yeah, and speaking of keeping track position, Jonathan Delaney in the number 9, currently getting closer and closer to Bryson Hicksonbaugh, almost on the bumper coming into some of these turns here. Jonathan Delaney is definitely going to be putting that pressure on Bryson here very quickly, and I think things are going to be shaping up very, very quickly for Bryson. You can kind of see as well that Bryson has fell off a little bit from the pace of Cameron Stone, as I think now he's mostly in the department of just trying to defend his second place position from Jonathan Delaney, who we all know is a very, very strong contender here. And I gotta say, the distance that these guys are putting between themselves and the rest of the field is honestly very interesting. Usually it's only one driver that kind of puts himself out in the front of the rest of the field, but no, in this case we have roughly 3 drivers. Cameron Stone still kind of out there a little bit, nearly a second between himself and Bryson Hicksonbaugh, who's currently second, but these guys are still quite close to one another, and I think it might possibly get a little bit closer here as things go on, but we'll only see. And like you mentioned, Andre, too, once these guys start to see lap traffic, that only makes things go a little bit faster as far as who is where and how fast they're able to close these positions between one another. So I think we're going to see some very interesting racing here very soon.
And, you know, watching this number 9 work his way around the track, I think back to what Curtis just said there. Chris said, he mentioned it's been a lot of laps. These guys came down pit road for tires on lap 30 or so, and we're all the way up to lap 82. Well, when it comes to long run, when it comes to maneuvering a car on old tires and being able to keep the pace, I don't think there's anybody in the field quite as good at that as John Delaney. I mean, week in and week out for pretty much the entirety of the playoffs, when it comes to long runs, it's always that number 9 that still has the speed. So as these tires wear, it really doesn't surprise me to see John right up on the bumper of the 63. But what does surprise me is that both of these drivers, Jonathan Delaney and Bryson Hicksonbaugh, just closed in a couple tenths to the leader in one single lap. And coming through 3 and 4, it looks like the 63 is going to have more center rotation speed as well. I'm starting to think maybe Cameron Stone burned his tires up.
It's possible. I think the result in Cameron Stone, though, is that we have the shade coming out here at Martinsville. It's going to help with the asphalt temperature at this point of the race. It's going to halt a little bit of the tire wear. It's still going to be there, but not to the same degree, I have a feeling. But you're right, almost just about a second separates 1 and 3 in the on the grid right now. So Cameron's looking in his rearview mirror for sure, and he's getting a little bit careless there getting a little high in those turns, not nearly as low to the bottom of the track as he was previously when he was able to put that gap together. So something to keep in mind. He's got a little bit of a wiggle through those turns.
Yeah, Cameron Stone's definitely going to have his work cut out for him. Lap 86 of 500. We are just about, I believe, 50 laps, just under 50 laps to go here before we reach the end of our first stage here. Yeah, Cameron Stone's definitely going to have to put the pedal to the metal here if he wants to be able to maintain that gap and increase it. But Bryson Hixenbaugh and Jonathan Delaney, I don't think want to let that happen whatsoever. I think these guys are doing an absolutely fantastic job just keeping the pressure up on that 57 machine, and I think that's just going to keep continuing to play forward throughout the rest of this race. I don't think we're really going to see too much of this action kind of change. I think these guys are going to be exchanging positions quite often. These short tracks are, as we've said multiple times already, they're very difficult to make passes on, and you're kind of relying on just maintaining a solid line, a solid pace, and just hoping that you don't make any major mistakes. You don't find yourself too high on the turns and find the guy behind you taking the low line and able to make a pass on you. These are things that you just have to be very consistent on, and I think Cameron Stone is going to have to definitely put his game face on today if he wants to win.
About 4/10 between Delaney and Hixenbaugh right now. That's my battle of 2-3 to look at, and Cameron Stone could take advantage of that by putting some separation between him and Hixenbaugh as Hixenbaugh tries to fight off Delaney.
Yeah, I think Chris just hit the nail on the head there. If these guys start battling it out, that's going to allow Cameron Stone to maybe get a bit of a gap and a little bit of breathing room. But right now, I think things are super tense for all three of these drivers because Cam knows if he makes one mistake, the 63 is going to be right there. And the 63 knows, oh, all right, yellow flag number, I believe, 3 of the session comes out. 4. So we're not entirely sure. Oh, okay, Jason Taylor, I'm hearing. He's up in the wall. He drives it down the banking. Man, he wall hard. There's a lot of damage. That number 37 machine. Let's take a look at the 3-wide TV replay. Coming into turn 1, and looks like a little bit of wheel smoke going into the corner. And yeah, he just locked those tires up. And oh man, hard driver side hit to that safer area.
Yeah, definitely not what you want to see there for the number 37 machine of Jason Taylor, who has kind of found himself kind of falling further and further back in the field. And I'm not sure if it's just he's struggling with the setup a little bit, struggling with the car. Maybe it's just a track that he's not too happy with. There could be a number of different things that could be happening to that number 37 machine tonight, but yeah, I think Jason Taylor's definitely going to be a little frustrated tonight, but hopefully he's going to be able to keep it out on track and be able to finish out today's race. And with these mistakes comes lessons, and hopefully he'll be able to learn and be able to adapt as the rest of the race goes on.
That's our longest green flag run without a caution, as well as we went roughly around 30 laps or so, if my math is correct. That being said, you had most of the top of the field, actually most of the field in general, did go into pit row. This caution actually happened almost perfectly in tune with what everybody in the top 3 wanted to do. Now Cameron Stone, Delaney, and Hixenbaugh are going to have to work their way through Kevin Steele and Preston McRae, who we've seen in the top 2 for the first time today. He is, those 3 are going to have some work cut out for them as we get to the last part of this first stage.
Absolutely. And real quick, before we go back green, let's have a quick word with our in-race reporter, Robert Miller. Robert Miller, you got a copy?
I got you.
Well, Robert, it's been kind of a crazy race. We're averaging cautions about every 25 to 30 laps. How's the car feeling, and what's it like racing out there?
Yeah, about the car. Like, I mean, this is the first laps I've turned here all week. I've been super busy. So, yeah. It's sneaky how this track goes because it's tight start to run for about 20-25 laps, and then it starts to slide and slick off, and I think that's where it's catching everybody out.
Absolutely. Well, Robert, keep up the good work. You've made your way to the front of the field pretty early in this event. Looks like you got a fast car, even though you maybe didn't have the most confidence in it. But I think the lights are going to go off next time, so we'll put you back up in your chat, and we'll get in touch with you again under another caution.
Yeah, we'll see if I make it this time.
All righty. Robert Miller out of the booth. not too much confidence in the car, but man, for saying that the car is a little bit on edge or that it's the first laps that he's turned, still doing one heck of a job. And I think that's what makes Robert Miller Robert Miller, man. He can come to a track that he has not ran in a long time with a car that maybe he doesn't like that much, and he can still come out here and run top 5.
Yeah, even if you are not all that confident with the car or even with the track, just coming into a race and just trying to have fun, trying to compete as best as you possibly can be quite rewarding and can sometimes actually play in your favor as we get ready to turn another green flag lap here. And there it goes. Green flag is out. Kevin Steele is trying to lead some laps here today as he has Cameron Stone and Preston McRae now side by side behind him. Preston McRae drops back a little bit, and as you can see on your screen there, that high line just does not work for most of these drivers here. It is very easy to lose your pace on that high line. It is not ideal for a lot of these guys. But Cameron Stone, out of nowhere, comes back and takes his first place position, and here he is leading some more laps. And Kevin Steele back in second place, or now fourth place now, excuse me.
Yeah, and talk about people who had rough starts. Preston McRae, who started 2 on that restart, he's back in 8th now as he's continuing to drop positions and actually just tapped the wall going into going into the front straightaway. So this is not a good position for Preston McRae, who keeps dropping positions. He's actually running the high line on laps or on turn 1 and 2, and things are not working well for him as he's already found himself to the back of the pack.
Yeah, we all kind of agreed at the top of the broadcast that tires were going to be massively important tonight, and I think Preston McRae and Kevin Steele are a great example of why. I mean, these guys, we've seen them have speed all night long, especially Kevin Steele, but you put these guys with fresher tires behind them, and there was nothing they could do. Kevin held on for a little while, but was ultimately unable to really contend versus the fresh tires. But at the line, we had 30 to go in the stage, just a short dash at a track like Martinsville. 30 sounds like a lot, but it's going to fly by. But I'll tell you what, Cameron Stone not having the advantage that he's had in these prior restarts. Look at this, Jonathan Delaney in that number 9. He is closing the gap. He's right on the bumper now and coming through the corner. Look how close to the curb that number 9 gets. 57 can't get that low. It seems like he's running half a lane up. Not by choice, but that's just because it's what his car wants to do. John's car is a little bit more freer, and that's not really English, what I just said right there, but his car's a little bit more free, and if he gets the door open, then maybe he's going to be able to make a move here.
Might be looking for the bump and run here. Delaney just about got into the back of Cameron Stone, but looks like he backed off at the last possible second, so that's something to look out for, a little bit of physical contact between the 9 and the 57.
Yeah, very interesting developments happening here in the front of the field between the 57 and the number 9 machine. Jonathan Delaney, I kind of expected John to have a little bit better kind of just line management going into these turns, just staying as low as he possibly can. Now, not to discredit Cameron Stone, he's doing an excellent job just maintaining his first place position, but I think Jonathan is just able to be a little bit faster in these turns. And I think that's giving him a massive advantage as we have another yellow flag come out onto the field with Dustin Hall involved in the number 1 machine, as well as the 44 of Randy Drumhiller.
That is unfortunate to see that number 1 up in that outside wall. Again, the number 1 running another special paint scheme this week. It is another Jimmy Strong paint scheme, kind of in support of his nephew, who he calls Jimmy. Who was unfortunately admitted to the hospital in a battle with cancer. And again, I just want to reiterate that everybody at 3Y TV is just sending our full love and support to Jimmy and his family. And let's take a look at the replay and see what's going on here. Number 1 on the outside lane. We've seen that outside line reach out and bite guys quite a bit this race. And Drumhiller, I think, just got in the corner a little bit hot. But again, it's one of those situations, guys, I don't think you can pin blame on anybody there. These guys entered the corner bumper to bumper, and all it took was the 44 to break just a millisecond later than that number 1, and unfortunately they came together. Luckily, I don't think either of these guys have that bad of damage. I think they're going to be able to get those cars back out on track. And one of the nice advantages of a short track is that aero really doesn't matter. You can beat up the bodywork, you can bend it in, bend it out, whatever. And generally, you don't lose much speed. So hopefully, these guys' night is not over.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like you said, Andre, the body work does not really affect your overall performance on the track too much. It's never really going to have too much of an impact on your race performance. It's really when you start to have those severe damages to your car, where you're having to go into pit road and get them maintained, where that's really going to impact your race, and that's not what we want to see here. And we've already come close a number of times. I think we've actually had that happen to a couple drivers here already. But so far, the majority of our field is still, actually, I would say 99% of our field is still out on track. So that is a very good thing to see here. Just over lap 100 here, getting closer and closer to wrapping up our first stage.
The situation right now sits, we're averaging the caution of about 22 laps or so. We still have 21 laps, almost 20 laps left in this stage. So do we see another one before the stage ends is going to be my main question mark. You also have racers that they're about probably halfway through their tire life, as long as they've run clean to this point through since they changed their tires last. So that's something to keep an eye on as well, is do they take advantage of another caution potentially, or do they just wait for the stage to end?
Well, and another factor to your question of do we see another caution, because we are right on the line of, laps left versus average laps per caution. I think anytime you see the number 63 and the number 9 together on track, the likelihood of a caution shoots up about 20 or 30%, because these two, they got a bit of a history, and I find it really fun that they're going to be restarting in the first and second rows respectively, with Bryson on the inside, John on the outside. I mean, really, if this restart goes the way the previous restarts have, these guys are going to wind up side by side racing to the stage end, and boy, heaven only knows how that's going to end. But here we go, pace car down pit road, the number 57 going to try to get another jump. Looks like he's going to wait a little bit longer, and he does, changing up that strategy, and it worked out flawlessly. RJ Root getting a run on the high side. Bryson trying to fight back down low, but here comes the number 9 for the lead, right up against the bumper. John, probably one of the most impatient drivers in the league, and I say that with all due respect. He is right on the bumper of the 57. He can see that stage win practically out of his windshield. What does he do?
Jonathan Delaney, Cameron Stone had a very impressive launch there, but it did not last very long. Jonathan just absolutely sent it into that first turn, put the pressure on those brakes so that way he was able to keep his line, and just got on that bumper of the 57 machine. And as he does it again here going into turn 1, coming out of turn 2, doesn't quite have enough speed currently to make a pass right now, but if he keeps up what he's got going on now, and even here on your screen, you can just see the difference in each of these drivers' line. You can kind of see Cameron Stone going a little bit higher, but as I say that, Jonathan Delaney went a little bit wider going into turn 1 there. Interesting to see there.
He's tried going high. He's tried going low. Good defense so far played by Cameron Stone, realizing what Delaney's trying to do. But the way these two are close together right now, one mistake by Cameron Stone is going to put Delaney in front. So any exit out of a turn, any entrance into a turn that goes slower than he wants, and Delaney's had a couple of different opportunities to maybe get the run on the high side or the low side. Kind of take your pick.
Number 9 getting real aggressive with it. As you were talking there, he got completely sideways out of the corner, got on the throttle too hard, barely saved it. There goes Cam getting loose. These leaders are pushing their cars to the absolute limit, and you took the words right out of my mind there, Chris, when you said the number 9's gone low, he's gone high. He's tried everything, and it comes down to Martinsville's kind of a one-lane track, and if you're going to make a pass, you either have to try every possible line, or you just got to straight up move the guy if he's that good at defending. And so far, Cam has been absolutely phenomenal on the defense. It's just that right now, that ability is being put more to the test than it has been all night long, because the number 9 and the 63 are probably the closest cars in pace to him. And with only a handful of laps remaining in this stage, he's got all the pressure in the world in that mirror.
Yeah, there's a rearview mirror. He's looking at it pretty consistently as he's got Delaney sitting on his back bumper. You cannot even see where his license plate would be right now. That is how close Jonathan Delaney is to Cameron Stone. And Stone is not sure if it's going to be a brake check or what, but Hicksonbaugh right there as well is right on the bumper of Delaney. So this is a 1-2-3 tic-tac-toe right by each other, about not even a second separating the three cars.
Yeah, this is absolutely fantastic work from these drivers here. And I got to mention, too, Bryson Hixenbaugh was able to take advantage of Cameron Stone and Jonathan Delaney battling it out there for a little bit and was able to close the gap between himself and the top two drivers here. And Bryson is now looking to just stay in this little group that they have here up in the front of the field. But right now, it's still the Jonathan Delaney and the Cameron Stone show, as these two guys are still just battling it out. And we only have 9 laps left to go here in this stage. So I think Cameron Stone is absolutely looking to win this stage here.
And it's only 9 to go with the line. You guys know as well as I do, at a track like Martinsville, those 9 laps are a blink of an eye, especially when you're behind the wheel of one of these cars, because you are just tunnel vision. You're tunnel vision on the car in front of you, you're tunnel vision on the car beneath you, trying to keep it straight. And before you know it, that green and white checkered flag is waving. So these guys absolutely wasting no time and no effort as they work their way through 1 and 2. And again, I'm noticing it. The number 9 running a lower line than Cameron Stone. Cameron's just about half a lane up. It's not enough to open the door for the number 9. The thing is, both of these drivers, I think, are playing a game of inches, because with how high Cameron Stone is running, if he enters the corner just a mile an hour too quick, he's going to push up enough that he does open the door. And with John running as low as he is down on the curb, if he just goes down 1 more inch, he's going to hit that curb. And sometimes you can get a bad bounce off that curbing. It'll send you flying up the track, and you'll have no choice but to let off the throttle, maybe even get on the brakes. And if that happens, John's going to have to concede the position to the number 63. So both these guys running a line that absolutely does not permit either of them any room for error.
So something I'm noticing as well, Delaney's running a little bit faster than Cameron Stone is in the corners. It's not much, but about 2 or 3 miles an hour pretty consistently in every one of those turns. And Cameron Stone getting they're running about the same on every straightaway up towards 122, 123. So that's really where Delaney is catching that extra time, is in those corners. That's why you see him able to make up that distance and get right on the bumper pretty consistently on Cameron Stone.
Yeah, absolutely. Cameron Stone is just he's really trying his best to just keep out in front of that number 9 machine and keep him behind him as long as he possibly can. And I think that's going to be the move here for the entire race here. And Cameron's really going to have his work cut out for him. We've said it multiple times already, and we've talked about this in the past few minutes. These lines are very difficult to maintain. Andre said it, if you hit that curb even just a little bit, it's going to be very bad for you. And it could be very bad for people behind you as well. They might not be able to stop in time, and it can cause a big wreck. These things can happen in the snap of a finger, and that's all it takes to ruin a race for any of these drivers here. And I think Cameron Stone and Jonathan Delaney are going to be on their A game tonight. And it's already showing. Lap 129 to 500. We only have, I believe this is 1 lap to go here as we cross the line here. The final lap of this stage. And I think Cameron Stone is going to have the win for this first stage.
Certainly looks that way.
He's got enough of a gap now that I don't think the number 9 could make a lunge at it, so he's just got to make his way through 3 and 4. He can take it easy. The 9 does close the gap a little bit, but time's not on his side, as Cameron Stone's going to cross the line, take the stage win just in front of John. It's going to take 10 cars to cross the line for this lap before the administrators swing the caution. There it is. And it is now official. Jonathan Delaney has won this stage. The top 10 in that stage, the drivers who scored points. Cameron Stone takes home the stage win. Jonathan Delaney second. Bryson Hixenbaugh third. RJ Root brings it up to fourth. Brandon Pierce, after that incident earlier in the race, works his way back up in the top 5. Robert Miller sixth. Sean O'Brien Jr. seventh. Alex Princeton is going to be P8. Ryan Samuelson ninth. And rounding out your top 10, Kevin Steele, who stayed out on older tires. So, man, we're going to let these guys work their way down pit road. As soon as that 57 gets out of pit road, we're going to bring him down to the booth to have a word with our stage winner, see how he's feeling. I know he's got to be having a pretty good time. I know he enjoys a good battle behind the wheel, and I think John was providing that, to say the least, and especially at a track that Cam would say is his favorite. You know he's having fun, so can't wait to have a word with him. But for now, let's just see who gets the best stop. Can anybody maybe gain some track position, lose some track position? iRacing is very similar to real life in that you can have variance in your pit times. You know, sometimes it's tenths, sometimes it's less, sometimes it's more. But it's never a sure thing. So there goes Dave Fugue behind Cameron Stone. I'm hearing that Kevin Steele stayed out, and I'm not sure if that was an intentional thing, and maybe he wants to lead a lap and come down pit road next time by. But he did come down pit road last caution, so maybe trying to gain some track position. Cameron Stone's out of the pits. We're going to try and bring him down. See if I can't locate his channel. Cameron Stone, you got a copy?
Yes, sir.
Well, Cam, you brought home stage 1 at your favorite track on the circuit. Looks like you're having a good time out there.
Yeah, the cars feels pretty good. I think on the short run, John and Bryson might have me, but haven't really had a long run, 50, 60 laps yet to really tell where we are on that. So just hoping to keep this track position, keep those guys behind me, make them use their tires more than I am.
A little bit of nerves at all with John Delaney breathing down your neck last part of that stage. I think he was on your bumper more than once.
Yeah, he tagged me in 3 and 4. Running a little bit different line than me. I think he's entering a little higher and kind of carrying the speed through the middle where I'm trying to do a diamond. So, yeah, little bit of nerves. John has had his moments with quite a few people in the league, myself included. So we'll see how it goes.
As he's
definitely do not.
Right now.
Right, I definitely don't want to get took out of this one. So God help him if he does do it.
Oh, man. All right, Cam, well, the lights are going to go off next time by, so we're going to put you back in your chat there. Good luck with the rest of the race, and hopefully we're talking to you in a little bit.
Appreciate it, bud.
And there he is back to his Team Apex chat. Cam said it, guys. John's had his moments with a number of drivers in the league. I think that's the best way to put it. So with him being up front and all these drivers having so much speed, it's just a recipe for a lot of fun racing. I think these guys are already doing a great job of putting on a show. That first stage was a lot more exciting than I was expecting it to be. No patience, no riding with these guys. These guys were giving it their all from the very beginning. Here we go. Kevin Steele, kind of the outlier here, guys. Again, he's on the older tires outside of row 1, and he's right in front of the number 63. So we'll see how that works out for Bryson and Kevin. But for now, the 57 checking up the field hard, down to 43 miles an hour. And that actually allows the car to beat him to the line. Now, that is actually entirely legal. You can pass the car to your inside so long as you are the car on the high line. And the simulator does not see a problem with that. Neither does real-life NASCAR. However, the number 24 is going to fall back. He's got those older tires. Man, oh man, there he goes through the field again. This is the second time he's tried the strategy, guys, and it just doesn't seem to be working.
Yeah, and I don't think that being on those slightly older tires, now granted he pitted in the last caution around, it was lap 106 was the last time that he entered into pit road. So even though only about just under 20 laps, or excuse me, yeah, 20 laps, those tires are, it's it's very easy to find yourself just off that pace right off the bat. The rest of the field, like you guys said, everyone's on fresher tires. It's very easy to just lap someone who is on those older tires. It can be quite difficult to maintain your pace as well. It's unfortunate to see for Kevin Steele, but we'll see later on how that kind of plays out for him. He does currently have the same amount of pit cycles as I believe it's the top 7 now. So he's gonna have a little bit more sets of tires to work with for the rest of the series, or for the rest of the race, excuse me. So that might play in his favor a little bit more. Kevin Steele, I definitely would keep an eye on him because he is a solid contender here, and I think that we could find him out in the front of the field more often than not.
Keeping an eye on Bryson Hixenbaugh. Hixenbaugh is closing the gap on Jonathan Delaney, but the top 3 have again put about a second and a half, almost 2 full seconds between 3 and 4 at the moment. Robert Miller got caught a little bit behind, and he's not able to quite catch up to the front of the pack. But again, Stone, Delaney, and Hixenbaugh, it's been like that since about 3/4 of the way through the first stage, and it continues here.
And those tires for Kevin Steele is going to be a huge advantage if we continue to get these cautions. It'll definitely be an advantage because eventually these guys are just not going to be able to put fresh tires on for these restarts if they keep coming down at the rate they've been doing it. But Kevin will be able to. So, like Mason said, he'll be a car to keep an eye on. But Also, I want to issue a bit of a correction there. I kind of forgot that Kevin Steele stayed out. He was the leader on that restart. So the reason the 54 or the 57 checked up was because Cam was trying not to beat him to the line. Because if Cam had beat the leader to the line, that would have been a penalty. And with Kevin Steele on those older tires, that's kind of an interesting dynamic that we kind of saw play out there. You know the car to your outside has old tires. You know he's not going to be able to restart as good as you. But you also know that if you beat him to the line, you're getting a black flag. So what choice do you really have but to let off the throttle, take it easy, maybe check up the field behind you, and let him do his thing, which is exactly what Cam did. And ultimately, it worked out. He showed a little bit of patience, gave him the position early on to avoid potentially getting a flag, and it got him up to the lead. And I also found it really interesting, guys. Cam's own kind of analysis there was that, yeah, I think John's got me on the long run, but on the short run, but on the long run, which we haven't had yet, I think I might have a better car. I'm seeing the opposite. The longest run we had was about 40 laps, like Chris said. And at the end of that 40 laps, I think John had the car to beat. Where that 57 has been strong is in these short runs.
Yeah, Cameron Stone like you said, Andre, he's very solid in these short runs, and I think these cautions coming out kind of sporadically throughout the stage has kind of played in his favor a little bit. He's able to kind of just give himself a quote-unquote break between each of these little stints here that he does. But Jonathan Delaney, on the other hand, is a driver who we've seen is a very excellent long-term runner. He is very solid at just maintaining his lines consistently for an extended period of time, and I think that's what's going to happen here for this second stage if we are able to maintain caution-free.
That absolutely could be the case. I'm also noticing like Chris mentioned earlier, the shade is rolling in and out. Really, Chris has been the only one to mention it, but it's happened a number of times where we've gone from full sun beating down on the track to a ton of overcast. At the beginning of the race, it was really only overcast in 1 and 2, kind of sunny in 3 and 4. Right now, there must be one humdinger of a cloud over Martinsville because, there we go, caution again, and the number 37 once again involved. They drive past him. The leaders were nearly caught up in that. They're in 1 and 2. That's going to provide, I believe, somebody with the lucky dog. Well, actually, no, because Jason Taylor would have been the lucky dog driver, but he was involved in that incident, so nobody gets it, I believe. That is unfortunate. But what I was going to say before this caution came out is with this track temperature fluctuating, something these guys can do in the car without even thinking is they can adjust their brake bias and kind of change how the car enters the corner and even drives the center of the corner just by flipping a switch. And I gotta wonder where these guys prefer that to be. What kind of brake bias are they kind of feeling comfortable with, and are they really playing with it as this track temperature changes? It's kind of a question that I gotta ask maybe our in-race reporter, which let's see if we can bring him in. Robert Miller, you got a copy?
I got you.
Well, Robert, I got a bit of a question for you out there. We're seeing a lot of fluctuation in the track temp, a lot of clouds coming in and going, so the track's kind of heating up and cooling down. Are you messing with the brake bias out there at all? Is that something that these drivers are really utilizing?
No, the brake bias kind of set where it's at. It's just setup deal, and how the car wants the brakes to be set. You don't really mess with that. It's not like real life where they can play with fans and all kinds of stuff to heat up different brakes and stuff. It's just iRacing. You can only do one thing.
Gotcha. Well, how's the car feeling since last time? You said, I haven't turned laps here in a while, maybe not the most confident, but you've had a few more laps to turn. You feeling a little bit more comfortable?
Yeah, I'm getting more comfortable with it. I can feel I'm getting better. I'm tweaking with the set, getting it better and better as we go. We'll see if I have something by the time lap 300, 400 comes around.
All right. Well, Robert, looks like you're going to be going green pretty shortly here, so we'll put you back in your chat. Good luck with the rest of the race, bud.
Appreciate it, buddy.
And there he goes back to his chat. So you heard him. Not really messing with the brake bias much. They're just kind of leaving it where it is. He says the setups are pretty fickle, kind of leaving it where the car is happy. So that kind of makes sense. This track is so tough to drive. I think even when the track temperatures fluctuate, maybe these guys just want to, even if they could make it a little bit better, it would be a risk because you could take it too far, make the car worse. And some of these guys just comfortable leaving it as it is.
Yeah, leave well enough alone, I think, is the right call here, especially on a track as intense as a Martinsville, where one wrong setting, one wrong change can put you up into the wall or put you and 3 others up into the wall as well, and you really don't want that. at this point. This restart about to happen, and Delaney and Hixenbaugh again in the 2-3. And we'll see if Cam can leave them in the dust, leave them side by side. But this is where Delaney took advantage last time on this restart. Cam Stone did not get as good a restart as he had previously when Delaney was not in his rear view. So this green flag is going to be very interesting to see how close the number 9 can get to that number 57.
Yeah, the 57 of Cameron Stone is definitely going to be putting the pedal to the metal here. I don't think he's going to try and hold the field up behind him quite at all, as he's going to have Jonathan Delaney on his outside in the number 9 as these guys enter into turn 3, and they're going to come out of turn 4 with the green flag in view. We are going to be racing here once again, and let's see what the field does here. Cameron Stone with the launch. There he goes, right off the line. Very impressive work there from Cameron Stone, and Jonathan Delaney is going to try and make something happen here for himself as he dives down into turn 2. Coming out of turn 3, not quite the same pace as he seemed to have in the first stage. What do you guys think?
Well, not quite the same pace, but I think part of that has to do with a little bit of tire wear. We have 26 laps since the stage ended, since the first stage ended, the second stage began. And you're going to start to see these tires get about 3/4 wear, maybe a 2/3 if you're lucky. So these top speeds are going to lower a little bit. You're going to see things get a little bit looser into those corners. These drivers are going to have to be a little more careful. But Cameron Stone is absolutely pushing the pedal to the metal right now, leaving Delaney in the dust, and Hixenbaugh is right in number 9's rearview mirror.
And it all goes back to kind of what we were observing. I think we all kind of agree that, from what we're seeing up in the booth, the 57 seems the fastest on the short runs, which, again, is kind of funny because Cam was saying he felt the 9 had the advantage in that circumstance. So on the short run, he is kind of leaving that number 9 in the dust. Bryson Hixenbaugh is also a driver that I'm keeping my eye on because I don't think he's got the car to beat. I think the number 9 and the number 57 are just a little bit quicker. But I mean, you heard Robert Miller. I think all these guys are doing what Robert's doing. They're working on the setup when they come down pit road, making what changes they can make. Maybe not brake bias, but other things. Tire pressure, something as simple as tire pressure, maybe track bar, things like that, just to see what they can do to get a little bit more out of the car. I mean, some of these guys have crew chiefs and spotters that can kind of make those changes for them. They don't even have to do anything. They just got to tell their spotter, hey, do this in setup when I come down pit road. And they can kind of do that. So the 63, as close as he is in pace, if he does find something, which again, it is a bit of a risk to throw the wrench at the car when you know you've got a top 3 car and you know that you're pretty fast. Do you really risk it all for just an extra tenth on your lap time? But if he were to find something, he could definitely be right up there on the bump with the 57 because he's shown a lot of potential tonight.
Number 9 getting a little more aggressive in these corners as well. Something I'm noticing, another couple miles an hour added in, is just trying to cut this deficit between him and Cameron Stone down quite a bit.
Yeah. Jonathan Delaney here. I think John is looking to try and save that car a little bit here in this stage. It just doesn't seem like he's trying to put the pressure on nearly as much as he was in the first stage. Excuse me. And I think that is a smart move to make here in this second stage, and I think we see it a lot here in the 100% Cup Series, where the second stage is just kind of a chance to just keep the car on track and keep things nice and smooth.
Absolutely could be. Top 3 still kind of single file. In fact, I would say now is about a good time for a through the field. We are on lap 166 and got quite a bit of racing left here in stage 2. I'll start it out with the race leader, Cameron Stone. He's led just about every lap tonight, save for maybe just 1 or 2 that Kevin Steele was able to stay out and lead. But he's had the dominant car all night long, especially on the short runs. He's at his home track, his favorite track, and so far doing what he needs to do.
Jonathan Delaney in second place in the number 9 machine. We've seen Jonathan Delaney work his way through the field very quickly all the way up into second place, and he's been putting the pressure on the 57 here for quite some time, but he's looking to just keep things nice and steady here for the second stage and just keep himself in second place and prepare for the third stage.
Bryson Hixenbaugh, a little bit patient right now. He's in the 3rd spot, up 14 positions from 17th in qualifying. He is one that's kind of waiting for something to happen in front of him. Jonathan Delaney running about 0.8 of a second in front of him. But Hixenbaugh more keen to just keep everybody else behind him. He's got about a second and a half, second and 7/10 between him and Robert Miller, who's had a pretty decent car today. So I think he's going to be pretty content in that spot. Again, he does not have the car to beat, or so it would seem. So he's just content to be in that spot.
And running P4, Robert Miller in that number 10. He came into this race and he told me before the race that he has not raced here in quite a while, hasn't turned many laps, didn't know what the setup was going to hold, had no idea what the car was going to do, and yet here he is running in the top 5. Like Bryson, maybe not the car to beat, but a car with a ton of potential, especially as the race goes on, and he figures out the lines a little bit more, figures out the track a little bit more. He could be one to watch.
And in P5, Raymond Root in the number 8 machine. He's actually on the bumper of the number 10 machine of Robert Miller currently. We have not spoken too much about Raymond Root here tonight. He has worked his way 14 positions through the field here today, all the way up to P5. That's quite impressive to see here from Raymond. Hopefully he'll be able to keep the pressure on and keep that number 8 machine here in the top 5.
And Raymond Root actually has an added piece of information. He actually has the third best lap on the day at 19.11 seconds around the track. So that's something to keep an eye on as well. He's had a pretty good speed lap going through. But Sean O'Brien up 4 spots from the 10 spot. He qualified top 10 today, and he's got about a second and a half between him and top 5 right at the moment. Second and maybe 3/10 is what he's sitting at. But he's trying to get up there. He's working on probably fighting it a little bit, as he doesn't quite have the speed through those straightaways that he would like to have, and not quite able to make up the time on the corners either.
And looking back to P7, we've got Brandon Pierce. He was a driver who was up in the top 3, dicing it up with the leaders early in this race. Then he got a little bit loose in the middle of the corner, slid up into the outside wall, got a little bit of damage, which I'm sure by now he's gotten fixed under pit stops. But to do so, he's had to give up quite a bit of track position. So for right now, I think the name of the game for the 38 is just to be consistent, to keep the car clean, and to take advantage of the restarts when they come, to slowly work his way back up through the field. If we can get up front, I think that's a driver that may have a chance, as the caution does come out to kind of interrupt our through the field. But that is your top 7, and the rest of the drivers in the top 10, just to shout them out. Alex Princeton, P8, Randy Drumhiller, 9th. Kevin Steele is going to round out your top 10. But for now, let's see if we can identify. Oh, okay. Yeah, and that is the number 3, Brian Mabry. Let's take a look at the 3-wide TV replay. That's exactly what happened to Mr. Mabry coming into turn 1 right behind Preston McRae. And just as our producer says, too much beans. Gets on the throttle a little bit too hard. And unlike the number 14 guys, not able to keep it off that inside wall.
Yeah, definitely struggled to keep it away from that wall there. He definitely just could not correct it. Definitely unfortunate to see here from Brian Mabry, as that would be, I think, his 2nd or 3rd incident here in this race here at Martinsville Speedway. Definitely going to be hurting in that number 3 machine.
Not sure if it's intentional, but everybody except Damaris Hickenbottom is going into the pits at the moment. Mabry, who was the cause of that caution, is out of the pit box as well. But now, okay, the Hickenbottom went into the lap. No, he's still out. Okay. Interesting decision for him to stay out, maybe lead a lap or two to keep the older tires. We'll see how that affects him going forward.
Well, I think we're going to see a lot of maybe off-the-wall strategies from Damaris. He comes into this race 66 points to the negative. That is a gap that is actually impossible mathematically to make up in this race, so he would have to win tonight to move on to the Final 4. And if you don't have the car to beat him on speed, I say it every week, but if you can't beat him on speed, beat him on strategy. But the number 9, or 09, is going to make his way down pit road and get that car serviced. Maybe just staying out, leading a lap, letting the leaders come down pit road. Something to think about, too, is even if you're on the lead lap, you can come down a lap after the leaders. And at a track like Martinsville, sometimes you may want to come down when pit road is less congested. It's a very difficult pit road to navigate, very narrow and 2 very sharp turns at either end that could influence your pit road speed. It's very easy to get caught speeding here. So maybe that played into his decision.
Yeah, very well could have. It's very, very interesting to see the different strategies here for pit strategy, at least. But yeah, Andre, I gotta agree with you. I think it might possibly be in the better interest of these lead lap drivers, or these leaders here, to pit maybe a little bit earlier, a little bit later than some of these other guys, especially when you have a caution out on the field as well, just to get yourself away from kind of all the chaos of pit road, as it can be quite difficult to manage here on these short tracks. They can get very congested very quickly, and definitely not something you want to be involved in an incident in pit road.
Absolutely. Pace car is going to shut off the lights this time by, I believe. And yep, there they go. 1 to green. So we're going to double them up. And again, Cameron Stone's going to have to play some defense. I'll tell you what. If this was a defense class, Cameron Stone would be top of the class because he has had to play defense all night long. And it kind of makes me concerned, if we do get a run long enough to get into lap traffic, how good are the leaders' offensive capabilities? Because they haven't had to use them all night. They're not keeping them sharp. And as silly as it sounds, if you don't use that kind of mentality or that kind of ability, and you're so focused on one thing all race long, something comes into the race to shake that up and force you to change your mindset, it can be difficult to deal with. So hopefully we'll see how that plays out. But Cameron Stone, like a rocket ship out of turn 4, I almost forgot what turn it was because I'm kind of an idiot, but he got a gap, but it was immediately taken away. The number 9, he was 2 car lengths back going into the corner. Through turn 1, he closed it entirely. Now he's on the bumper.
Yeah, and Hicksonball right behind Delaney as well. This is going to be a pretty quick, tight three-car race, trying to put some gap between them and the rest of the field. But you're right, as good a start as Cameron Stone had, Delaney had a real good turn 3 and 4 to get right back on the bumper of him. And Delaney just a little bit quicker through those turns. Again, another 2 or 3 miles an hour difference does make a pretty big difference when you're that tight on the bumper of the person in front of you.
Yeah, Jonathan Delaney, even at a disadvantage on that restart, he's just always able to regain kind of that gap very quickly. It's credit to the skill of that number 9. Jonathan Delaney, an incredible driver. And we actually start to see Bryson Hicksonbaugh, the number 63, start to close his way up to the top 3 here as they go single file going into turn 3. I'm curious to see if Bryson's going to try and make an attempt here to get a little bit closer to the field here. And as I say that, it's almost on the bumper of Jonathan Delaney coming into turn 1 here, almost on the bottom, and sends Jonathan Delaney up into the top of turn 2 here. Bryson Hicksonbaugh with an absolutely impressive overtake for P2.
Oh, man, that was a quarter panel hit and a half that Hicksonball came up and got him just inside the turn as they entered into that curve. That was a really, really aggressive play by Hicksonball. But it was kind of nice to see somebody make the aggressive line and no cost of it. So everybody survived it. Nobody's up into the wall. And I know that Delaney not happy dropping back into P4.
And, I'm the kind of guy that, I'm not opposed to a little bit of drama in a race. I think it makes it fun. And that shot right there was the shot heard around the world because it'll have repercussions all throughout this race. Let me tell you something. First of all, to the viewers at home that don't know, the number 9 and the number 63, they're in the same voice chat right now. They're currently in radio communications with one another. So I'd love to be a fly on the wall in that holler. But also, with the history that these two drivers have, I don't think it ends there. I don't think that's a one-and-done deal, especially when you give them the fact that we're on lap 189 out of 500. We're not even halfway through this event. John's got all the time in the world to close that gap and retaliate.
Yeah, I think we're definitely going to see the number 9 work his way back through the field and definitely give another love tap back to the 63 of Bryson Hicksonbaugh. And we've seen it throughout this season already, too, the 63 and the number 9. Just kind of having friendly duke-outs here and there. And luckily, nothing was made of it. We didn't have a caution come out into the field. Jonathan Delaney, unfortunately, dropped down to P4. He's going to be behind Robert Miller now in the number 10 machine. Robert Miller, our in-race reporter today, has got to be feeling quite fantastic.
Yeah, got to be feeling good up in 3rd place, but you can't get too confident, can't get too cocky, because at the end of the day, you still got Jonathan Delaney in your mirror if you're Robert Miller, and he has been quite fast all day long, very difficult to defend against. But I gotta wonder if that damage isn't holding Jonathan Delaney back a little bit, because ever since he dropped back and lost that track position, he's not really gaining it, and I've noticed his lap times have fallen off, averaging about a 10th slower now than before that contact. So maybe it's tire wear, maybe it's that little bit of damage. It is the left rear quarter panel, which I would say is the less important side of the spoiler. If you mess up the right rear, that's going to have a lot bigger implications when you're turning left. But even still, maybe affecting him as he's getting really sideways in the corners. I'm noticing he's throwing it into the corner, almost like he's driving a dirt car. You can see him crank on that wheel, so maybe fighting tight after that.
He's lost about almost half a second to about 7/10 of a second since the contact from Hixenbaugh. So that's something to keep an eye on if he continues to lose time to Robert Miller. Robert Miller has been about the same since that all took place. And Bryson Hixenbaugh against Cameron Stone here, he's lost about 2/10 of a second, but he's floating between about half a second and 7/10 himself as the gap continues to kind of ebb and flow as we get into this being lap number 196.
Yeah, and I think Jonathan Delaney too. I almost want to say that he's definitely a little frustrated at this point in time, and I think that might even be affecting just his overall racing in general. Getting pushed down from P2 like that definitely wouldn't put a smile on anyone's face, and I think that can just kind of mess with your mental state a little bit and kind of throw you off your game just a little bit. But I think Jonathan Delaney is just trying to maintain what he has now in P4 and just slowly work his way back through the field. But he's got Robert Miller in front of him, who seems to be doing a fantastic job of defending his P3 position here today.
Yeah, playing some phenomenal defense in the... Just a quick update on some of the drivers that have been involved in incidents earlier in the night. Jason S. Taylor has taken his car behind the wall, as did Tyler Pinsino a long time ago. David Duke, I believe, was the first to drop out, and so that leaves pretty much the last car on track that's involved in an incident is going to be Brian Mabry. They're 2 laps down. Dave Fugue, also involved in a couple incidents, just took his car behind the wall. He was 1 lap down prior to this. As I was talking, he took it behind the wall, so not entirely sure why. We did see him go down pit road, maybe just not feeling the setup. Maybe get a little frustrated with this track. It is very easy to get aggravated with the car. If you don't like the handling of the machine and you have 500 laps in front of you, sometimes you just say, all right, I've had my fill for the day.
Yeah, this is, it's definitely frustrating when you're not having a good race and you're not even halfway through it and there's still over 250 laps left to go. But as our producer said, we are actually getting closer and closer to some lap traffic now. And that's going to, I think, shake things up here just a little bit for the guys in the front of the field. Currently, Cameron Stone and Bryson Hixenbaugh working their way through a little bit of lap traffic here. But I think it's going to have a little bit of implication as far as how fast these guys are going to continue to go through these turns. I think it's going to slow them down just a little bit. Not too much, but the guys behind them, especially Jonathan Delaney, they're going to be taking advantage of that. They're going to be putting the pedal to the metal and trying to close that as quickly as they possibly can. And it kind of seems like these lapped cars are not really getting out of the way too quickly for some of these guys here in the front of the field. So it's going to be quite interesting to see how quickly both Robert Miller and Jonathan Delaney are able to close the gap between themselves and Cameron Stone and Bryson Hixenbaugh.
Just had a lap car, just to your point, stay in front of Cameron Stone for a full lap before you actually let him have the inside line. So this that could let Hixenbaugh back into the fold as he's brought it back to about a half second. You look at Robert Miller and Delaney, who are still pretty far back, so I'm not as worried about them at the moment. But if you're Cameron Stone, the cooperation of the lap traffic in front of you is going to be paramount to try to put some gap between you and the rest of the pack. But we're getting to the point where we are about at our average or a little bit beyond that for a caution. So kind of keep an eye on that if this is closing in on our biggest green flag run of the night.
Absolutely, and as these drivers navigate lap traffic, one thing that might be a big help is a spotter telling them where the lap traffic is, how much they're closing in, and what lane they're taking. Race fan in the chat wanted to know exactly how spotters work on iRacing, and it's actually pretty simple. If you have an iRacing subscription for yourself, you can go ahead and click on somebody's name if they're on your friends list, and you are able to spectate that driver. You have a whole plethora of cameras available to you, everything from a blimp camera to a helicopter camera to a follow-along camera to a bumper cam, anything you could possibly want. And you can use that to kind of tell the driver via private radio communications where the drivers are. Also on iRacing, a spotter has the option to upgrade to crew chief by selecting a different option. And when they're the crew chief, then they have access to a black box, which allows them to make setup changes, such as how much fuel they take, what tire pressures they are, and which tires get changed, among other things. So basically, if you got a friend who also has a subscription to the service, they can provide all those services to you while you race, and maybe take a load off your mind while you're trying to turn 500 laps here at Martinsville.
Yeah, a spotter can definitely be very useful here in these series, as it can give you very useful information kind of in your ear. The spotter or your crew chief is able to kind of give you information based on how well you're performing, how close or how far behind drivers are behind you. Very useful things that can be very, very useful for drivers here, as it can be quite difficult to, kind of remember to yourself, oh, well, hey, I'm in this position, or I have this much fuel left to go here in my lap, or I have this many laps to go before I need to get new tires. Things like that, it can be very difficult for you to remember those things on the fly when you're behind the wheel and you're just trying to keep your car out on track and turn some laps.
Bit of news here. Jonathan Delaney starting to try to close the gap. He's jumped into the 3 spot, and he shaved about 0.3 of a second off of his time in the last 2 laps. So off of his gap anyway, between him and Bryson. So this is that he could be working to try to get there. Still some time left in this stage. We're working on coming up to some pit time here. Next caution, or could we start to see our first green flag pit parade of this race is going to be the question.
Absolutely. Just a quick update. Brian Maybury has taken his car behind the wall as well, so he is one of 3 drivers within the last 20 laps or so that's taken it to the garage and decided to end their day. Maybury, I think, had a fair amount of damage. It didn't look like much when he had that contact with the inside wall, but the thing is, there is one part of this car that you absolutely do not want to damage under any circumstance. That's the front of the car. If you damage that radiator or the engine in any capacity, you're going to lose horsepower, and you're going to lose straightaway speed. And once that happens, it's very hard to recover. You're not going to be very competitive. I have a hunch that Maybury maybe got a little bit of radiator damage. His temps were going up, and he was just having a bad time with that car. So he is behind the wall. But you mentioned that number 9 closing in there, Chris, and you are absolutely right. And it makes a lot of sense to me because, like I said, I look at Jonathan Delaney as one of the best long-run drivers in the league. And here we are on one of our longest runs under green we've had all night.
Yeah, and Cameron Stone as well is also looking quite impressive in this long run as well. He's doing a very good job of just staying consistent. He's got quite the gap between himself and Bryson Hixenbaugh, nearly 2 seconds now between himself and the number 2 position car. So Cameron Stone is definitely looking pretty solid here in this long run, but Jonathan Delaney, like you said, Andre, he's also very solid in these long runs. So it's going to be interesting to see how that number 9 machine works his way through these laps here and tries to close that gap. It actually seems to be that he's getting closer and closer here, but with near about 3.5 seconds between himself and Bryson Hixenbaugh, he's still got, I would say, at least 10 to 15 laps before he's anywhere near that second place car.
Yeah, it could be a number of laps before he gets up there, but I think you give him enough time and he definitely will find his way to these guys. Like Chris mentioned, suddenly it was like a light switch got flipped. John just started improving his lap times, getting a little bit better here and there. And of course, I think John is going to bounce back from the damage he got. You got to think, even if we don't get another caution under this stage, we are going to have one more stage caution guaranteed coming up at lap 260. So he'll have that opportunity to come down pit road, not go a lap down, anything like that, and get that damage fixed. And when it comes to minor bodywork damage like that, if it is affecting him at all, they should be able to buff it out entirely. And when he gets that car back out, it should be just like new. So that contact, a little bit of a setback, but absolutely nothing insurmountable. And when that happens, when that comeback happens, guys, that is going to be quite interesting because he's going to be right back there on this restart, presuming these guys finish where they run or at least close to it. That's going to put John and Bryson pretty close on track again. And you got to think John maybe not a little too happy with that 63.
And we say that, and Delaney's only 3.25 behind Hixenbaugh right now, 3-2. So that gap is lessening ever so slightly every time they take a turn, every time they keep going. So Hixenbaugh is going to have him in his rearview mirror if things continue soon, but maybe not quite yet. He may be able to escape the stage with it before that happens.
Yeah, and only about, I think it's either 35 or 36 laps left to go here as we cross the line. Things are going to shape up very quickly here for Stage 2. And if Jonathan Delaney wants to be able to put the pressure on the guys in the top 2 positions currently, he's going to have to close that gap here very quickly. He still has enough time to do it now, but once he does, I don't think he's going to have quite enough time left to be able to take potentially a second or even a first place position here for this stage. But even with that out of the picture, going into Stage 3, if he were to stay in 3rd place currently, that's going to put him in a great position for the final stage. I believe it's just over, just under 250 laps. We're at 240 laps for Stage 3, so that's going to give him plenty of time to work his way through the field and be able to possibly lead some laps here and maybe even win this race.
How about the gap that Cameron Stone has put on the rest of the field? Just about 2.25 seconds between him and Bryson Hixenbaugh. That's a real nice place to be in his particular spot. He is going to be running on worn tires, though. He actually just ran his first under 20-second lap in quite a while with those worn tires. So that's something to keep an eye on as well. He's floating between 2003 and 1996 as far as his lap times. Pretty good years, both of those. As you see, Bryson and Delaney, they're running somewhere in the range of 2005s to 2020s, and then Hixenbaugh's case, a 2025 just recently as well. So Cameron Stone remaining consistent on those lap times. That's key for him to put a gap between.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead, Mason.
My apologies, Andre.
You're good.
Cameron Stone, he's doing a fantastic job, and now that he's having to work through a little bit more lap traffic as well now too, it's going to impact these guys' lap times. It's going to impact the entire field, I think, quite dramatically. But we've already had a handful of drivers leave the race and take their car into the garage and call it quits. But it's very easy for these guys to find themselves in very tricky positions, as these guys are going to have to manage guys around them that are maybe going a little bit slower and not wanting to move out of the way just maybe fast enough to their liking. It's going to be very interesting to see how the rest of the stage here develops.
It absolutely will. I think this lap traffic is surprisingly playing into Cameron Stone's favor. Chris mentioned he's starting to increase the gap to Bryson. It's 2.8 now. When Chris was talking about it was 2.6. So he's gained another 0.2 in that time alone. And it seems like the lap traffic just is not giving the leader a hard time, which is kind of surprising, because usually in this situation, what you expect to see is the lap traffic is going to give the leader a hard time because they don't want to go a lap down. They want to be able to pit with the leader, stay on the lead lap, and not have to rely on the lucky dog when the stage caution comes, or even potentially take a wave around. But then if they go a lap down, well, they're already a lap down. There's no point in racing the guy in second place for your lap, because that doesn't really change anything. So usually the leader's got a hard time with the lap traffic. Everybody else, they can just go right by. Here it seems to be the opposite. Lap traffic is just letting the leader go by and being very nice and very courteous, which, hey, in racing, sometimes being the nice guy and making allies and racing people respectfully, they remember that, and if you're ever in a situation where you need them to kind of return the favor, oftentimes they will.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you there, Andre. If you spend enough time with a group of people long enough, and you start to respect people and kind of help each other out, if you will. And especially that holds true in racing and in most sports in general. If the opportunity ever poses itself and you find yourself in that position where you can kind of give back, it's definitely always a good thing, and it helps build relationships between drivers, between teams. and it overall just makes the racing a lot better. You never want to see a field of drivers that just don't like each other, because then all you just see is kind of just a demolition derby, if you will. And I don't think anyone wants to really watch that as far as Cup Series racing goes.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm taking a look at the battle for 10th right now. Dustin Hall and Randy Drumhiller. They've been going back and forth. Cameron Stone was actually right in between them at one point, as he had a very long lap trying to contend with those two, as Drumhiller didn't want to give up the 10th spot to Dustin Hall, and Dustin Hall was right in his bumper before Cameron Stone intervened and got in between them. So Dustin Hall lost some pace, giving up the lap traffic to Cameron Stone. Now both Drumhiller and Dustin Hall are behind the lap because of it.
Yeah, so they're going to have to fight it out for the Lucky Dog position. And just a reminder to the viewers at home, the Lucky Dog is, how it works essentially is, if you are the first car one lap down, so you are the highest in the running order one lap down, it means that you are going to get basically a free pass under caution. You're going to pit with the leaders. You don't have to start at the tail end of the longest line. You pretty much start ahead of the rest of the lap traffic, and it just gives you that advantage. If you're not Lucky Dog and you're a lap down, the only way to get that lap back under caution is to take a wave around, and that means not pitting at all, which means you're going to be restarting on older tires. So with these guys battling it out for Lucky Dog, really it means quite a bit.
Yeah, especially going into this third stage, being a lap down is definitely going to be hard to try and regain. Now, on these short track, it's not impossible. It's definitely doable, but you have to be very consistent, and you kind of just have to hope that the guys in front of you are making mistakes and you're able to take advantage of that. Now, if you are able to regain that Lucky Dog or get a lap around for this third stage, then yeah, you would absolutely want to take advantage of that. You'd want to utilize that, because it's going to be harder to try and work that lap back once the green flag comes out for the third stage, as we are only, I think, 16 laps left to go here, 15 as Cameron Stone crosses the line.
Curious to see where the strategy is for Cameron Stone, the leader. Does he pit before the stage break, or does he wait for the stage break? If he pits before the stage break, that gives him a chance to get there and get pit and get out before all the congestion comes on the pit row. That's going to be the question there.
Well, and something to remember too is that Martinsville is really short. If you pit under green, you're probably going to go more than one lap down. In that case, You're not really going to get that back under caution. So it's funny. Short tracks sometimes increase the amount of strategy options you have in one sense. When it comes to tires, undercutting can mean a lot more at a track like this than it would at a track like Kansas or Atlanta. But at the same time, it also limits really, when it comes to stages, if you can pit, because you risk going so many laps down.
Fair point.
Yeah, this race is going to be very interesting to see how it plays out for the final stage here. 240 laps here at Martinsville Speedway. It'll be our longest stage here, and with just I will mention that things have gotten a lot better as far as green flag runs. Things have looked quite consistent for quite some time now, and I think that's hopefully going to carry over into the third stage, and that it's going to be interesting because we're going to see green flag pit stops. We're going to see changes in how these guys and what their overall race strategy is, because Andre, we've heard it from multiple drivers throughout the series that a lot of these guys, they save it till the very end, and I think that's exactly what's going to happen here tonight. And then there's just there's too many opportunities for these guys to be able to make something happen here, and I think there's going to be a few that are going to possibly make that happen here tonight.
Well, look who's back again. John Delaney is now in the bumper of Bryson Hixenbaugh. And we know what happened the last time those two got together. I think Delaney may be thinking of some revenge just before the stage ends, potentially. So keep an eye on that number 9 car, who's less than a half a second behind that Hixenbaugh bumper.
And that lap traffic, Preston McRae only helped Delaney to close in a little bit more. And then the 63 got loose to additionally help the number 9. So this battle is absolutely at our doorstep. This is no longer a matter of if. It is a question of what is Delaney going to do now that he's there. We wondered, was he going to get to him before the end of the stage? Well, now we know that he did. The question is, how aggressive does he get, and does he retaliate? I think right now, honestly, I think what Bryson did was probably a bad move because we've seen it before where if you make your move too early, you move somebody too early in the race, they got a chance to come back and take you out. I mean, look at the real-life Roval race. We had Chase Elliott, Kevin Harvick. Kevin Harvick tried to take out Chase Elliott halfway through the race, but he didn't wreck him out. Chase was able to come back out on track and had all the time in the world to plan his revenge, so to say. And that's kind of what Bryson did here. He might have put his cards on the table a little too early. And John, he can wait. He knows he's got a fast car. He knows he can probably pass the 63 clean. But when we get to the end of the race and Bryson doesn't have time to retaliate, I think that's when we see the 9 strike.
Yeah, and speaking of the 9 striking as well, he seems to be doing that now. Coming out of turn 3 here, almost on the bumper of the 63. Fantastic work for Jonathan Delaney here. And I'm also noticing as well, he's taken that outside line here a couple times here, trying to get around Bryson Hixenbaugh, maybe even just trying to get Bryson Hixenbaugh to shake up a little bit. But Bryson just doing excellent work of just defending in front of Jonathan Delaney and keeping out in front of him. As we only have, I believe, 3 laps left to go here before we see the stage caution come out.
Yeah, not long left in this stage, so if Jonathan Delaney is going to make a move on the 63, he's going to have to do it really quick. The leader isn't really even a question for these guys. Cameron Stone is so far out ahead. He's built up to a 5.9 second lead, but this lap traffic was really thick there for a minute. They had a number of cars to deal with, and surprisingly, it didn't open the door for Delaney to try and make a move. He's going to stay right on the bumper here on lap 257. And again, corner exit, a lot of speed there. I'm sorry, 259, as we are on the white flag lap of the stage. And looks like the 63 gets a little bit sideways.
Ooh, yeah.
The number 9 closes in a ton. What does he do in the last corner of the stage? Here they come. The 9 loose on the straightaway, but he gathers it up, closes the gap, but surprisingly not too aggressive. He's going to stay right on the bumper. And Jonathan Delaney is going to bring it home third in the stage with Bryson second.
Yeah, very, very interesting to see there. Sorry to cut you off there, Chris.
No, you're good.
I really wonder what happened there to Jonathan as he got into that straightaway. Just at the very tail end of that straightaway going into turn 3, that car just seemed to be very wobbly. And even coming out of turn 4, he seemed to struggle a little bit keeping it out on track. I'm not sure if that had anything to do with the tire wear or just what was going on with that number 9 car, but hopefully he'll be able to get it back together here for stage 3.
Yeah, I think there was a couple of things in play there as far as Delaney not being too aggressive with Hixenbaugh. I think part of it was tires. I think Delaney realized that he didn't quite have the tires to be able to make a run on the outside or risk maybe getting it too loose and into the wall. And then Hixenbaugh was in the perfect place to play some defense on his own right, realizing the same thing that Delaney realized. So Hixenbaugh gets the better of that exchange, but we have a whole stage left, and it's the longest one of the night. And these two are going to start the next stage pretty close to each other as long as their pit times are pretty similar.
That they will. The number 9 had a bit of a sketchy pit road entry. He was very sideways, kind of locked up the tires. I don't believe he got any penalties. He was able to get out of pit road pretty quickly. Speaking of coming out of pit road, we're going to have a word with our stage winner. If I can bring him in, give me one moment. Cameron Stone, you got a copy?
Yes, sir.
Well, Cam, stage 2 win. This race is shaping up to be quite a dominant performance out of that number 57 Biscuitville Ford. You feeling pretty confident?
Yeah, I feel pretty good about it. We finally did get a long run there, and looks like after about 40 laps, Bryson starts to fall off more than me. Kind of put some doubt in my mind about John because he did get almost turned going into 1, lost a lot of time, and then he caught right back up to Bryson. So he's probably the car we got to look out for. We'll just try to keep her out front and keep her clean.
How'd you feel about that lap traffic? They didn't seem too keen on letting you by the first time by. When you first started coming up on it, were you communicating with them, letting them know you were coming, or because you had top 10 on the line in the battle in front of you? I noticed in one particular spot.
Yeah, they I mean, I kind of understand these guys got a job to do too. They're out here running a race, so I'm not the kind of guy that'll get on the radio and tell them to move out of the way. It's kind of their prerogative to do. It's just my job to get through there as quick as possible and not hit anybody.
Fair enough.
All right. Well, Cam, thanks for your time. I think the light's going to go off next time by, so we'll put you back in your team chat. And all right, good luck with the rest of the race, and don't pull what you did last year.
Yeah, thank you for putting that in my mind.
Absolutely, Cam. That'll be some fun podcast topic for next week.
Oh, that was brutal, Andre.
Cam and I, we, for the viewers at home, just so you think I'm not being too rough on him, Cam and I talk pretty much every day outside of the league. We're pretty good friends, and we do a podcast together, and we kind of talk trash to one another. And I had to give him a little bit of a hazing for what happened last year. It was kind of a meme within the league. But the pace car goes off pit road, and Cameron Stone is going to be the control car. Here we go. At a turn 4, the number 63 is going to have the high line, but he's going to immediately go side by side as Cameron Stone gets a huge jump, as he has on previous restarts, and that's going to put Delaney fighting for second, and he is going to claim it as the 63 gets a little bit loose, just enough for Delaney to get clear. And we're going to single file out for the top 3.
Let's see how long this goes, though. Hixenbaugh again right on the bumper of Delaney. We've seen this before, a little bit of deja vu. See if Hixenbaugh wants to get aggressive twice on Delaney, but Delaney does not enact revenge off the quarter panel of Hixenbaugh at the end of the last stage, and instead takes second and leaves Hixenbaugh, at least for the moment, in the dust.
And speaking of a driver that has kind of slowly slithered his way through the field here, number 8 of Raymond Root in 4th place currently. I gotta say, this guy is doing a fantastic job of just trying to keep up with the guys in the top 4 currently, just almost riding the bumper of the 63 of Bryson Hixenbaugh. And watching him for just a little bit on my end, it almost seemed like he was mimicking the same line as Bryson, just trying to stay behind that 63, stay as close as he possibly could. But Raymond Root, up 15 positions from where he started today, and I think stage 3 is where we're going to see him kind of make a statement here. Hopefully we'll kind of see him work his way through the top 4 here, maybe put a little pressure on these guys here, make things a little bit more interesting, as he is also, I don't think he is in contention for playoffs as well, so he's just here to race and have fun. So this is going to be an exciting one here for Raymond Root. But Bryson Hixenbaugh still behind Jonathan Delaney, just trying to work his way to the bumper of the number 9 machine, and Jonathan Delaney on a mission to catch up to Cameron Stone, as there's about a 1.5-second gap between these two drivers. And Cameron Stone, like he said, he seemed to have a little bit better of a long run after about 40 laps in the stage. So we'll see if that holds true here for Cameron Stone, and we'll see if Jonathan Delaney is able to prove him wrong.
Indeed. You mentioned RJ Root there in 4th, and I got to say, if this was a short track series, if we came to this kind of racetrack every week, I don't think it'd be fair to the competition, because RJ is just a phenomenal short track racer and just painfully consistent. Maybe he doesn't win every short track, but he's almost always up there in the top 5, top 3. And there's not a short track he's bad at. He's good at Bristol. He's good at Martinsville. He's good at Richmond. He was even really good and really competitive at the Dirt Bristol race earlier in the year. So you come to a short track and you got to watch that number 8, because he's going to have some speed. So it's great to see him have a good run here tonight. Kind of expected it out of RJ. And I got to say, too, that guy always brings some fantastic paint schemes. I always give him the compliment whenever we talk about him. But his cars always look good. Always does something a little bit crazy, a little bit unique. And, as we're talking about him, gets a little bit loose out of the corner there. Snapped it back around. What a save by RJ. That's kind of what makes him a good short track racer, because really, and we haven't talked about it, but you got to drive these cars on edge here. You got to be counter steering. You got to be pushing your car right to the edge of the slip angle where your tires are just sliding. Because if you're not competitive. So when you can do that, when you can get sideways coming out of the corner and save it, that means you probably got a pretty fast car underneath you.
Yeah, absolutely. And excuse me again, Chris. I've even heard it from some short track drivers that I've spoken to and in other series, that some of these guys will even go as far to purposely slide their cars into these turns It can be a risky maneuver, but if you're able to kind of keep control of the slide, it can play in your favor. Now, it doesn't always work for every track. Every track is different, and the layouts are always not the same. But if you're able to kind of push that car into the turn and able to kind of just keep it at a slight angle, you can kind of find yourself a little bit faster going out of the turn into the straightaway. Some of these guys are doing it, but most of these guys are just keeping that car nice and low to the ground, hugging that curb as much as they possibly can. So I don't think we're going to see too much of that here, but it is a tactic that I have seen deployed by some drivers in other short track races.
Risk reward to that though as well. It depends on A, the banking of the track, and B, depends on how much more wear you want to put on your tires. You start throwing your back end out and sliding into those turns, you're going to add a little more skid to those tires, and they're going to wear a whole lot faster. But then, and on a track like this, do you want to play it more safe and not really put that on the table? You can there's a benefit to it if you can keep it, and if you slide, you're able to keep that speed as long as you don't lose your tail towards the outside wall. But it's a skill. It's an absolute skill, and it's definitely a gamble. And you really shouldn't have a whole lot of traffic around you while you do it.
Absolutely. It's just a different skill set entirely for these short tracks, and some drivers just kind of naturally have it. Definitely these drivers up front showing their ability. As also, just a quick update, Alex Princeton, driver of the number 19, has taken his car behind the wall. He was running, it would appear, well, actually, where is Alex Princeton? I don't even see him on the running order. Am I going blind? Yeah, he was P8, 1 lap down. So not sure what caused him to take it behind the wall. His car seemed to be in good shape, so maybe something outside of the simulator caused him to jump out. Hopefully all is well with him, but he is out of the race, currently falling through the running order as the cars work their way around. And Cameron Stone out to a 2-second gap. And man, that short run speed continuing to just be on full display from that 57 team. It seems like we get these early runs and there's just nothing anybody can do. But then the long run comes, and then I think John's got the car to beat, which is an interesting dynamic because I think it kind of throws this race into the realm of not necessarily chance. Obviously, a lot of skill goes into it. But what that means is both these drivers are hoping for a different outcome here. Obviously the number 9 wants this to stay green because he's got that long run speed. He knows that if this thing stays green, he's got the car to beat Cam. But Cam, on the other hand, I think he's hoping to kind of continue this trend that Chris has pointed out where, before stage 2, we were averaging a caution every 20 or so laps. I think it got up to about 30 laps average at one point there, but still fairly consistent cautions. And I think that's what's helped the 57 lead so much of this event because he's got such great short run speed. And every time the number 9 starts to come to life, we just stack him back up and start all over again.
Oh, yeah, you say that, and then the restarts have been awesome too. Talking about Cameron, so he's been able to take the lead off of the restarts and then keep it by just putting about a full second in between him and second place and third place, who run side by side for a moment. So he's able to get out in front and put the distance like he has here.
Yeah, it's definitely very impressive work from Cameron Stone, able to just maintain what he's got going on in that 57 machine. And Jonathan Delaney is definitely going to be the person to kind of keep an eye out for as things kind of progress further and further. And as you guys mentioned, we're getting kind of tipping on the edge here of possibly a caution coming out here sometime soon. But even as I say that, our field has kind of dwindled quite significantly, and we don't quite have the same number of cars that we do on track. So I don't think we're really going to see a whole lot of kind of bumping and grinding. But I think what will happen is we'll start to see some drivers just get a little bit too aggressive, and they're going to find themselves into the wall, and that'll potentially bring out a caution if we have another incident happen again earlier on in the race where we had a false caution come out.
Yeah, I'm seeing these top guys 1, 2, and 3. They're losing about a 1/10 of a second every 5 laps or so via lap times. So that's based entirely on tire wear as the shade comes out again here at Martinsville. But that's something to keep an eye on when they start getting to about 20 seconds, 20 and a half seconds. you will start to see their speeds dwindle a little bit as well. Their top speeds are a little more careful into the corners, and then you start to look towards pit road to see how many of them are going to start coming down. Do we see another caution here now that we have 7 racers left in the lead lap? That becomes the question of, do we have green flag until we go checkered, or because there's not as much traffic to try to work around?
Yeah, that's a good point. Definitely something to take into consideration. Another thing to take into consideration is that John Delaney is slowly reeling in the leader. He was a little over 2 seconds back just a few laps ago. Now he's brought it down to 1.7 seconds. So it's a slow gain, but it's definitely a gain. He is starting to have that car come to life, as we kind of expected to see from previous runs in this race, where the number 9 took a while to really get the pace, but then once he got it, it was there to stay. And also Hixenbaugh is kind of picking up the pace as well. I noticed his lap times are getting a little bit more competitive with the cars in front of him. So both these guys with pretty good long run speed. RJ Root falling back a little bit, 4 seconds back, and then Robert Miller there in P5, and he's about 8 seconds back from the leader. So we got some separation. 7 cars on the lead lap, almost 300 laps into this event. And right now, the lucky dog contender is Samuelson in the number 16. He's 1 lap down, top of the 1 lap down drivers. Kevin Steele is a driver that has kind of surprised me tonight, guys. I mean, he showed so much speed early in this race. He was really, really contending with Cameron Stone. Seemed to have the second best car on the track in stage 1. But I think some strategy errors are kind of what led to him losing track position, and it seems like his issues have just snowballed. Now he finds himself the second car 1 lap down, just barely inside the top 10.
Yeah, really curious to know what happened there to Kevin Steele. He did seem to have quite the car to contend with early on in the race. I think it was closer towards, I think it was actually stage 2, where we saw him. I think it was P4, and then after that he kind of fell off his pace there, and he's now in P9, down. I think he's actually down, just 1 lap currently from the leader. So definitely not the worst position you could possibly be in, but definitely not where he wanted to be in this race, I think.
Yeah, again, I think it was just a matter of strategy errors and things like that that have kind of set him back. He's not in it for the points, obviously. He was eliminated from the playoffs after the round of 12. So he's just kind of here for fun. It's just strange. Usually you see a car that dominant or that strong start and things just start to, go right for him. Things go their way, but you don't really see that kind of fall off. So hopefully that team figures it out. I'm sure they're going to be taking a look at the car, figuring out what they need to do to maybe find a little bit of extra speed, get that lucky dog. And really, that's all it would take. Getting back on the lead lap, as Kevin Steele did just, okay. Ryan Stevenson might have just given Kevin Steele the lucky dog as he spun out. And I believe Kevin Steele had gotten ahead of him before the caution flag waved, which would mean Kevin Steele gets lucky dog. But we're going to take a look at the replay. And coming in at 1 and 2, he's got Preston McRae and Kevin Steele behind him. And just a little bit too much throttle. We've seen that how many times tonight, guys?
3 or 4, yeah. Well, it creates a bit of a dynamic that we have to look at now, as you see a bunch headed in for a pit, including probably all 7 of the racers on the lead lap. You did see, and I was going to mention it, Delaney had brought the gap between him and Cameron Stone back to 1.5 seconds. So he was working on the speeds. His straightaway speeds were pretty good. He only lost probably 1 or 2 miles an hour on those straights, and he was still pretty good through those corners. And Cameron started to lose it, so that created an opportunity for Delaney to bring it down a little bit. Now it doesn't matter. Now they're back gridded up again, and everybody's on fresh tires. So now we can see what kind of distance a Cameron Stone can put in between Delaney and Hixenbaugh at 1, 2, 3, as they still remain the top 3 in this race and have for some time.
Yeah, and as we get later and later in this stage, having these restarts come out, having these cautions come out, it's not going to be ideal for Cameron Stone. It's having to consistently make those restarts time and time again. It's going to be challenging, especially when you have Jonathan Delaney on your outside practically the entire time. it's going to be very difficult for Cameron Stone to maintain that. So we're gonna see here what Cameron's going to be able to do here, if he's going to be able to increase that gap here once again and maintain it. I'm confident that he will be able to. Cameron Stone has been very consistent in doing that, but Jonathan Delaney, I almost think that he's got something saved up his sleeve here for this final stage, but I could be wrong, as we are just on lap 307 as we cross the line here out of 500. So there's still a lot of race left to go here. We are not anywhere near being done yet, so there's plenty of opportunities for drivers to make something happen here, and potentially for drivers that we haven't even seen out in the front of the field, so only time will tell.
And just a quick update, Ryan Samuelson has taken it behind the wall. Didn't seem like much damage to the number 16, but again, I think it's a situation where these drivers aren't in it for the points, and if they're feeling frustrated with the car, you can't really blame them for not wanting to turn 200 more laps. Like you said there, Mason, we're not even close to the end of this thing, and if you're already frustrated with your car, man, that is pure torture to drive a car that's just fighting you at every corner. But we have 1 lap to green. Lights go off on the pace car, and with Samuelson's departure and Kevin Steele being granted the lucky dog, that's going to transfer the battle for the lucky dog position to Dustin Hall and Randy Drumhiller. Now, Dustin, he's been fighting an uphill battle ever since that wreck. He got a lot of damage. Car hasn't been where he wants it, but a lot like Kevin Steele, if he can get that lucky dog, maybe he's able to pick up some track position. So we'll follow along with the battle between him and Drumhiller. Pace car pulls off. Cameron Stone on the low line. Let's see if he can replicate all of the amazing starts he's got tonight. And yes, he does. There he goes. He's going to leave the Nexus drivers, 63 and 10, side by side, as number 9. Whoa! Big slide out of the number 10. He actually dropped back about 3 car lengths from the 63 momentarily. That gave Sean O'Brien Jr., who, by the way, man, look at that. The 65 worked his way into the top 5. Now he's sliding up the corner, getting challenged. And Kevin Steele comes down pit road, surprisingly, after just receiving the Lucky Dog Award. So I'm not sure what that is all about. We'll try to figure it out and update later on. But, yeah, the top 3 cars bumper to bumper like they have been so often.
Yeah, and just not even a second separating the 3 of them. Cameron Stone, half second ahead, actually 0.6 of a second ahead of Delaney, and then another 0.4 of a second behind him is Hicksonbaugh. But taking a look, Raymond Root, Robert Miller, your two of the most consistent drivers today, still sitting in that 4 and 5 spot where they've been most of the race. But it is, as of right now, Dustin Hall and Randy Drumhiller, you mentioned the battle for the lucky dog. They are sitting right by each other at the moment, 0.4 of a second separating them. And they've gone back and forth most of the night. Cameron Stone, fastest lap on that last time by 18:89.
And as you say that, Chris, Bryson Hicksonbaugh with a little bit of a tap there to the number 9 of Jonathan Delaney, sending him to the top of turn 3. Bryson Hicksonbaugh taking another pass at Jonathan Delaney here to take second place. I think Jonathan Delaney is definitely giving Bryson Hicksonbaugh an earful at this point.
Yeah, we mentioned they're in the same chat. That makes things very, very interesting, and I'm sure there's crickets going on in there. No doubt about that. But another one that Delaney's gonna keep this as a note for later, maybe not so much at Martinsville, but later down the road. You'd be like, hey, you remember Martinsville? So, Phoenix is going to become very interesting in 1 week's time.
Oh, yeah. It'll be interesting for sure. And, I mentioned earlier, I called Jonathan Delaney probably one of the least patient drivers in the league. He's one of the guys that just wants to go, get the lead and lead all the laps he can. I think that holds true, which is why it astounds me that Bryson would make a decision like that. I'm honestly flabbergasted because you're trying the patience of a man who doesn't have patience. And Bryson knows this. So he's hit him twice, sent him up the track. I think the kicker here is that the number 9 had just repaired the left of the quarter panel from the first incident, and now it's dinged in again. I mean, if I'm Delaney, even I'm getting up there to that 63. I'm going to try to move him out of the way. This is definitely heating up and getting good.
It's funny to me you say that. Bryson's looking at John's last nerve, and he's like, I'm going to touch it. And that's exactly what's happening here as John... He's exercising some demons. I know they've been back and forth on numerous occasions in numerous races, and just add another chapter to that here at Martinsville.
Yeah, Jonathan Delaney and Bryson Hicksonbaugh, the battle between these two does not does not end between these guys. It seems to be week in, week out. Whenever these two are side by side, there's always something to come out. And as I say that, Preston McRae in the number 53 machine is going to cause another caution to come out onto the field. Not exactly sure what happened here, but Preston McRae having a little bit of issues here in the number 53 machine as we have a 3-wide TV replay. Let's see what happens here as he makes his way. Oh, just sends it sideways going into, I believe that's turn 3 there, possibly turn 1. Yeah, it's very easy to overshoot these turns, and if you're going too fast, you're not going to be able to slow down in time to make that turn.
So let's bring back to the forefront after McRae gets himself situated here. Let's bring back to the forefront both Delaney and Hicksonbaugh are headed into pit row. Now we're going to add another chapter to their rivalry as well. Cameron Stone, the leader, stayed out of pits, but both Delaney and Hicksonbaugh are right by each other in the pit boxes, and they're going to have a restart near each other again. Delaney now behind Hicksonbaugh. Does Delaney give Hicksonbaugh a little bit of what he's been getting, or does he pass him up again on the restart like he did the first time?
That's going to be the question for sure. It's another, I think, another note in the book between these guys, and it really could go either way. I think Jonathan Delaney, honestly, I keep talking about how impatient he is, but he is showing the most restraint, I think, out of anybody. The fact that he's been racing the 63 continually clean after all this is really surprising, and I think it's one of two options. Either one, John's taking the high road, which is fully possible. Here's the thing. John knows that if he retaliates against the 63, maybe that just makes Phoenix impossible, right? If you make somebody mad enough, they're going to make sure you don't finish Phoenix, right? Especially if you're somebody like Bryson, who he'll be, I believe, part-time for his own team next season. He's not really going to be in it for the championship. Maybe he drives it a little bit rough at Phoenix, and the number 9 knows that. He's saying, okay, I'm going to race him clean. I'm going to let him get it out of his system now, because if he hits me here and it calms him down for Phoenix, fine. I don't need to win this race. I'm locked into Phoenix. I know I'm going to be there for the championship race no matter what happens. So let it happen here, where it doesn't matter. Or the second option is that John is just waiting until the very end of the race, which could very well be, the possibility. Again, I think that's the best time to try and retaliate against somebody who's been pushing you around the track, is right at the very end. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out, but I think my vote is on that John is just letting Bryson get it out of his system now, so that Phoenix is a whole lot easier once it rolls around.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you there, Andre. It's, having to deal with this in this race is definitely not something you want to have to deal with. But if it's something that is kind of giving you issues and giving you a little bit of problems, and yeah, I think the best option is to just play it safe, especially when you know that you are locked into the next into the championship round. I think just playing it safe, not taking it too hard, too aggressively, is definitely going to be the move here as drivers make their way down the back straight, coming into turn 3, and they're going to come out of turn 4 with the green flag in view. We're going to start another green flag run here. Lap 324, 500. Cameron Stone and Raymond Root are going to be side by side this time, as Cameron Stone takes the launch on the rest of the field, and Raymond Root in tow with Bryson Hicksonbaugh and Jonathan Delaney nearly side by side. Bryson Hicksonbaugh able to get side by side with Raymond Root and stick it out in front of that number 8 machine. Very interesting to see that Raymond Root wasn't able to stick it down low there. I'm quite surprised by that, honestly.
I think he was giving Delaney, you realized Delaney had the faster car there, and he gave him the inside line. Because he didn't really want to play too much defense on Delaney, maybe knowing Delaney's personality and about how much he's gone through already in this race. That could be a thing, I'm not sure. But either way, Root content with giving up the 3 spot to Delaney at that set and taking the spot in the 4. Him and Robert Miller have been trading that 4 and 5 back and forth anyway, so I think he was content to move back there regardless and just let them duke it at the top.
And I think that caution, the way that this played out with the pit strategy here, definitely has been one of the biggest shakeups that we've seen so far tonight, because right now I think it's impossible for Cam to hold the lead. He's on older tires. Jonathan Delaney and Bryson Hixenbaugh, they have way fresher tires. And here goes Bryson to the bottom. He sticks his nose in there. He's making sure that Cam can see him in that little A-pillar mirror, but he was unable to make the move. But it's not going to be like this for long. I mean, eventually the 63 is going to make the move. He's got the pressure tires. The 57 is so loose. He's checking these guys up, and Delaney gets sideways on the curb. Yeah, he had to check up for Bryson and Cam, and then when he did that, that car just kind of shot down left to the curb, and it just shifted the weight of that car all around, and he did not have a good time, but he saved it. And so the question is, how does Cam recover from this? Because right now, he's at the disadvantage on these old tires.
And there's not a guarantee that we're going to see a caution again for a little while. So do we see, because we've already seen two in a very short space of time, Bryson Hixenbaugh trying for the lead here. He is going to take the inside line and take the lead from Cameron Stone. You called it, Andre. You said it wouldn't be long. And already Hixenbaugh makes the move, has the advantage, and Delaney may be next up.
And I think Cameron Stone on those older tires is definitely feeling the pressure now. Bryson Hixenbaugh going to be leading some laps here, and Jonathan Delaney also sticking it on the inside of Bryson Hixenbaugh. He's going to try and make a pass here for second place, as he does here coming into turn 1, coming out of turn 2. Now he's going to be in front of the 57. I'm sure he has been so eager to do that this entire race here, as Cameron Stone trying to make some attempts to make a pass around that number 9, but he's just unsuccessful, as Jonathan Delaney, he's fast and he's in a groove and ready to try and make a pass here at the number 63 of Bryson Hixenbaugh, who has been giving him some problems throughout the night.
Yeah, I can almost hear the evil cackle from here for Jonathan Delaney. This is exactly how his revenge plan is playing out. He gets behind Hixenbaugh, who's in the lead, maybe last 100 laps or so, puts him a little bit into the wall off the quarter panel, just like he's had done to him twice so far today. That could be something to watch if Hixenbaugh does not put some separation between him and Delaney, but Delaney's been really good in the corners.
Yeah, that corner speed out of that number 9 is just about unparalleled. And I got to say, I like how Cam played that scenario there. He knew he had older tires, and there was a point when he was battling with John that he could have slotted down to the bottom. You know, he could have played some extra defense, and he could have held up the number 9 while the 63 drove off into the sunset. There was more than enough room for him to drop down, but he did. He stayed up high. He gave it to John. Basically said, okay, I know you got the faster car. My tires are not going to be able to compete. It's a waste of my time. It's a waste of your time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to fall back to third where my car really should be just about right now. And if I get a caution and I get the fresher tires, then I know the advantage is going to be back on me, and I'll be able to have the advantage and get up ahead. I have confidence in that. So Cam really betting on himself there, taking it easy, knowing that, hey, all right, they got the fresher tires. Let's let him go and see what happens. But right now, Bryson so fast out in clean air, and this is the first time we've really seen the 63 in clean air. And at a short track like this, where you want all the turning ability as you can possibly get out of your car, dirty air can make a big difference. You know, it can make your car really tight, sometimes a little loose if somebody gets behind you and takes air off your spoiler. But if you're in the situation that Bryson is, nobody in front of you, nobody right up behind you, your car is handling optimally. And this is the first time Bryson's been able to experience that, and it seems like he's able to pull away a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit. Jonathan seems to be closing the gap just a little bit, going into, I believe that was turn 1 and 2 there. Going into turn 3 and 4 here, though, he's not able to keep the same speed, so I'm wondering if he's got a little bit better kind of speed going into turns 1 and 2 here that's kind of helping him close that gap. But Bryson Hixenbaugh, like you said, Andre, he's in that clean air, and that car is looking absolutely fantastic. And I gotta wonder too if that's just kind of what Bryson's plan was from the beginning, was to just kind of stick around in the top 5 a little bit, work his way through the field, and just maintain that, and eventually get out in the front and lead some laps. He had to work his way through Jonathan Delaney, and he did that. He was able to work his way around Jonathan, albeit not without a little bit of contact, but he was able to do it and keep this race going. Bryson's he's looking fairly confident in that machine right now, so we'll see if he's able to keep it consistent here for the rest of the race. Lap 342 of 500 here. Still plenty of race left to go, and still plenty of time for Jonathan Delaney to make something happen for himself as well.
You're talking about the clean air for Bryson. How about some clean air for Jonathan Delaney as well? He's got about 2.25 seconds on Cameron Stone in the 3 spot. So he does not have a lot of traffic around him. He's able to work about as well as he can work as well, putting more distance between him and everybody behind him while working to keep pace and doing so marginally successfully against Hicksonball. He hasn't lost much on him really at all. So this is something to keep an eye on. Both of them running about as well as they can by themselves in a place where the draft is not really going to be a thing nearly as much as other tracks. That it's going to be fun if Delaney's able to take advantage of maybe some careless turning, careless cornering by Hicksonball, maybe close that gap even further.
Absolutely. Right now, what I'm looking at is the long run speed is finally starting to come in for Jonathan Delaney. He took it down from 0.8 of a second to the leader down to 0.6. So finally, a little bit quicker now. The car is coming to life. And boy, if these guys were battling like their lives depended on it for third, I can only imagine what it's going to look like when they're racing for the lead. But then John gets loose, sacrifices the time that he made up right there. He got loose just before exit, and he was able to bring it back around, but scuffed away a lot of speed, giving up about a tenth that lap. But that tells you how fast that number 9 is. He scuffed away all that speed and still only lost 1/10 the leader. I think a lot of other cars in the field, they got loose like that, they'd be giving up 3 or 4 tenths. John just absurdly quick at the long runs of this race. And Cameron Stone, you mentioned him there, Chris, saying he's actually holding on pretty well. It's kind of stabilized at about 3.5 seconds, which tells me that we're getting close to the tire wear plateau, which we kind of mention every week. But for the viewers at home, there comes a point where it doesn't matter if your tires are at 50% or 90%. The lap times pretty much stay the same because they're worn. So even if you have relatively fresh tires compared to the guy behind you, once you hit that point, it's a level playing field. And I think that might be what we're seeing, as Cameron is just barely clinging on to that 3.5, 3.6 second difference as these guys work their way around the track. And my question too is, they can go 130 laps on fuel, which is quite a ways, but like Chris said at the top of the broadcast, tires are going to be a lot more important than fuel, and we might see guys come in a lot sooner than their fuel tank would demand. They could come in with a half full fuel cell just for the tires in this final stage. So I got to ask you guys, if you're a driver here in the top 3, what kind of pit window or pit strategy are you looking at or preferring?
Well, personally, if it was me, looking at the current last pit lap times, or pit laps for the top 8 drivers, most of these guys pitted in lap 320, lap 321 for some, even earlier for a couple drivers as well. It's it's going to be a matter of just how confident are you in staying out on those tires. If if you're a driver that hasn't come to this track to turn some test laps and kind of get a feel for how the car is going to perform in these longer stints, you might kind of be playing a little bit of a guessing game as far as where you want to pit, what your strategy is going to be. Now, if you're Bryson Hicksonball, for example, having Jonathan Delaney behind you, I think for Bryson, you're going to want to stay out in front as long as you possibly can. You're not going to want to pit before Jonathan Delaney. You're going to want to pay attention to that. But as far as a predicted actual pit window here, I think, right now, I would say probably lap 410 to 420 would be around where I would expect some of these guys to come in and get new tires. It could be a little off by that by about 10 laps or so, but that's my rough estimate, I think, right now.
I think these guys are I think they're going to be in a little bit earlier than that. I'm thinking about 380, 390 is going to be about the comfort zone for new tires, and that'll also let them top off the fuel. I'm taking a look at Cameron Stone. He's my big question mark. Does he push it all the way to that 380 before he goes in? Because then he can top off fuel. He doesn't have to worry about fuel for the rest of the race. But there's probably 2, maybe 3 pits left in this race, I think, for everybody that's on the track right now. So that is the main question mark. Cameron Stone put himself in a real big questionable scenario as far as his pit strategy goes, and it's fun to see where he decides to take a risk or be a little bit safer. But either way, he's going to need tires before anybody else on the track is going to.
Yeah, he'll be in dire need of tires. And the good news for him there is that he does have now an extra set over the number 9 and the number 63, as they came down when he didn't. But again, it's gonna rely on a caution. You know, that's gonna rely on a yellow flag coming out. And so far, stage 3 has been definitely the cleanest stage that we've had so far, and it makes sense. You know, the field was thinned out. We've had a lot of drivers involved in incidents or drivers that took it behind the wall. David Duke, Tyler Pinsino, Jason S. Taylor, Brian Mabry, Dave Fugue, Alex Princeton, Ryan Samuelson. All these drivers were here at the beginning, and there was more cars on the track, and now they're gone. So really, we've got about 13 cars on track, and a few of them are actually, sorry, we have 12 cars on track, and a few of them are so far back that they're probably not going to put up much of a fight when it comes to leaders rolling around them, and when it comes to racing for position. They're probably just out there trying to finish the race. So I think, as far as my prediction goes, we see this race stay green at least until closer to the end. And if that happens, that's exactly what Bryson and John want. You know, Cam, on the other hand, he's sitting there praying to every racing god and entity that he can think of that he gets a yellow flag, because his race may well depend on it. I think you're right there, Chris.
So Delaney, I'm noticing, has cut the gap between him and Hixenbaugh down to about half a second, and it's getting better. So watch that matchup going into probably lap 370 is when that's really going to start to be a more focused battle where Delaney's going to be right in this bumper if things continue this way.
Yeah, as things get closer and closer to wrapping up this race, and even as I say that, there's still a little under 130 laps left to go here. Still plenty of race left in this race here today. So, oh man, yeah, things are definitely going to shape up very interestingly for Bryson Hixenbaugh and Jonathan Delaney. Cameron Stone, you know, I think he, like you said, Andre, I think he's kind of going to be praying for a caution to come out, letting the field restart, and giving him another opportunity to regain his first position and lead some more laps here. But Bryson Hixenbaugh and Jonathan Delaney, I think, are definitely looking to keep this race green for the entirety of this, the rest of the race here. As these two guys, they both want to win. They're both eager. They're both very competitive, and I think Bryson and Jonathan are both going to put on a very impressive performance here for the final half here of this stage.
Yeah, I think the cards are in Bryson's hand, and I think that Bryson knows that. He's kind of in a situation where I don't think John can get too rough with him, because Bryson, up until tonight, has not really retaliated against the number 9 for anything that's happened this season. This is really Bryson taking off the gloves, and I think Bryson's probably in that voice chat saying, okay, John, go ahead, bump me, move me for the win. Let's see what happens next week at Phoenix. And so John, he kind of has to play nice. Like, he's being strong-armed into it. And, I mean, all the respect in the world for the patience and restraint that he's shown. But it's an interesting dynamic that's just, it's funny to think this has been brewing and boiling over all season long. I mean, from the drop of the green flag at Daytona back in February, these two have been going at it. And now that dynamic, that rivalry, may well decide the champion come next week.
That plays right into your conversation earlier about showing your cards too early. And I think Delaney may have showed his cards earlier this season a little bit too soon. And now that Bryson Hixenbaugh holds those cards, he has a chance to really put an effect. But now we come into lap traffic, and this is going to make things real interesting as to how fast this gap closes, if it does at all.
Yeah, you know, and even with that in mind, Jonathan Delaney doesn't even necessarily need to win this race today. If he does, it would just be more padding to his points. And while that's a good thing for him, you know, like we've mentioned a few times already, if he decides to get into contact with that 63 of Bryson, if he decides to get a little rough with him, that's only going to hurt him for next week at Phoenix. And even if he doesn't get a little rough with Bryson, Phoenix is still going to be an interesting race for these two, especially Jonathan Delaney. But here tonight, yeah, I think Jonathan is definitely kind of just letting bygones be bygones, if you will, and just trying to finish this race here. There's still a ton of laps left to turn here, and I don't think any of these guys are wanting to extend it any longer than they currently have to. And it's already shaping up to be quite the interesting stage 3 here, as we get closer and closer to our expected pit window here. I'm very curious to see what these guys do here. Lap traffic involved quite heavily now for Bryson Hixenbaugh. 2 cars in front of him, the number 8 of, let me see here, the number 8 of Raymond Root, as well as, I think that was the 38 of Brandon Pierce, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I believe, let me take a look. Whoa! Raymond Root gets a little loose in front of our leaders. 63 catches up a lot on the straightaway. That's the second time we've seen somebody get loose on the straightaway. Demar Hickenbottom in front of the number 8. He's loose on the straightaway again. There he goes down to the bottom. I think Bryson might have pressed square to intimidate there in that Lockjaw Lemon Tarts EA Sports Paint scheme, but he was able to get around him. Now he's got one more car to contend with. Morris Hickenbottom, also a playoff hopeful. The thing is, he would have to win this race. Right now, things maybe not looking too bright for the 09. He's 2 laps down in this must-win situation. He's going to move up the high line, let the 63 go. But look at this, guys. All this lap traffic and chaos has put the 09 within 4 tenths, actually now 2 tenths as they cross the line of the leader.
Ooh, right on the bumper, too. That was close, and it looks like Delaney backed off at the last possible second before he made contact with that 63 left quarter panel. So this is going to be a couple of interesting laps as these two are right neck and neck with each other now. Want to see how aggressive Delaney wants to get, and as it will have a ripple effect going into next week.
Yeah, Jonathan's definitely gonna have to play his cards very well here tonight if he wants to see himself be successful next week at Phoenix. And as these guys get closer and closer to one another, coming into turn 1 here, we're going to see Jonathan Delaney try and take a little bit of a dip just to get a little bit closer to that number 63 machine, get a little bit of that bump draft, and try and put some pressure on Bryson Hixenbaugh here once again tonight here at Martinsville. Jonathan, man, he's, like you said, Andre, he's being strong-armed currently, and I am very curious to know what he's going to try and do here to overtake Bryson without getting too aggressive and risk getting into the number 63 machine and possibly risk putting himself in a even riskier position for next week.
Absolutely, and while we've been following along with the leaders, been watching Cameron Stone, and I think so far I've seen Cameron throw a water bottle out of his window, a driving glove, and it looked like the hose to the AC to the helmet as well. He's really hoping for that caution. He's saying there's debris all over the track. It might even be raining. I think the 57 team is letting NASCAR know that there's some rain droplets there in turn 3. But while he's doing that, these guys are duking it out for the lead, and they are so close in pace. I mean, the 63 is running almost identical lap times to the number 9, and what's funny is I watch Bryson make a mistake, right? I watch him get loose in the corner, and as soon as he does, the 9 gets loose as well. I mean, they are following each other to that extent where one makes a mistake, and so does the other. And I gotta tell you what, I don't think John's taking it easy on Bryson. I think these two drivers are pushing their cars. It's just a matter of they're both so talented, and they both have such a good setup that it may well come down just to a simple bobble.
I know there's a rivalry between the two, but I think there's a mutual respect there as well. Delaney's respecting the ability of Hixenbaugh and giving it everything that he has, and same the other way. Hixenbaugh knows that Delaney's a hell of a driver behind him, and he is 100% going to give everything he can to keep Delaney in his rearview mirror and no closer than that. But as we get to we talked about the expected pit window. I was thinking 380, 390. This is the longest most of these drivers have gone without a pit in this race, so that's something to think about as we will get some wear on the tires. You're seeing the lap times get up into the 20s pretty consistently, and it looks like Delaney's having a better time handling it as Robert Miller hits the pits. The number 10 car jumps in from the 4 spot now to number 5.
Yeah, Bryson Hixenbaugh and Jonathan Delaney both have last pit laps of 320, so these guys are going to be on 46 lap old tires. So we're going to be expecting to see these guys come down that pit road here very, very soon. It's just a matter of who is going to bite the bullet first, so to speak. Bryson Hixenbaugh, I think, he's going to have his work cut out for him to try and stay out as long as possible. But, I also think Jonathan Delaney is going to try and push him to stay out even longer. Jonathan is a very, very strong competitor here, but he's also going to be struggling with the same issues that we can see on our screens. Bryson Hixenbaugh getting a little loose coming out of these turns, and Jonathan Delaney not not able to avoid that either. And these two drivers are going to be, oh man, it's going to be a battle between these two guys as far as who's going to pit first. And a little bit of lap traffic being involved here as well. Robert Miller in the number 10 machine getting in front of the lap leaders here. Very curious to see that happen. I'm sure that the Bryson Hixenbaugh and Jonathan Delaney are definitely a little flustered having to work their way through that as well, having to take the high line as Robert opted to take the low line here on these turns.
I'm watching Cameron Stone. He's been my main eye for the moment. I want to see when he wants to go in. You have a few cars that have gone in already. And then obviously Bryson and Jonathan, that's your story. But Cameron Stone, he has the oldest tires. He has the least fuel. And as you have less fuel in that fuel tank, you have more of a thought to get a little bit looser around the edge. Oh, there might be some contact. Delaney on the left quarter panel of Hixenbaugh. Is he going to try to pass him on this turn? He is, and he will succeed in doing so, or so it would seem. Delaney neck and neck, side by side, and Hixenbaugh makes it up on the straight.
And I can confirm. Sorry, Mason. I was going to say I can confirm there was no contact initially. The 63 just got loose, got on the throttle a little bit too soon. And now he has to rely on trying to fight back on the high side. But as we've seen all night, the high line just doesn't have that momentum. Sorry to cut you off there, Mason, as you were saying.
It's all right, Andre. I was going to say Bryson was doing a fantastic job holding it out on that high line the first time around coming out of turn 3 there. Or, excuse me, turn 4. It doesn't seem like he was able to hold on to it. He's going to drop down now to pit road and let Jonathan lead some laps here. So I think the strategy game has come into play now finally. Bryson Hixenbaugh is going to come into pit road, get those fresher tires, and possibly allow himself be a little bit faster than Jonathan Delaney, hopefully regain his lost lap as well, as Jonathan is now going to be making his way around turns 3 and 4, coming down front stretch past the checkered line.
And that's Cameron Stone jumping into the pits as well. So Delaney, the one holdout, along with Brandon Pierce in the top 3, to not pit as of just yet. But now that Cameron Stone has gone in, we may see Delaney make that turn maybe next lap through. So interesting strategy. Cameron Stone, I think, waited for either Delaney or Hixenbaugh or both to go in before he was going in. And now we can maybe see Cameron Stone be a little bit more aggressive, trying to take this lead back, as Delaney more content to just play with the lap traffic and kind of let them earn their laps back more or less, as he's sitting comfortably out in front still on old tires.
And it's not such a big factor now that the field is thinned out, but one thing I should mention is that Bryson, in coming down pit road first of the leaders at least, not first in the field, but first of the leaders, he took a bit of a risk, because at a track like this, if you come down pit road under green, you go 2-3 laps down, and then a caution comes out, and you're trapped that many laps down. That could very well be the end of your race, especially this late into the run. Now, that being said, Bryson's not the only one taking a risk. John's taking a risk all of his own. That number 9 car is evil right now. I've been following along, watching John drive this car, and not a corner has gone by that John is not counter-steering that car, snapping sideways, and even on the straightaway, I'm seeing him start to drift up and down the track. I mean, it's like watching a caterpillar go down the straightaway, down, up, down, up. And that car's not handling well. He's losing a ton of time to these drivers who took fresh tires. If he doesn't get a yellow flag, this thing stays green. Bryson might cycle out ahead of him with this undercut.
Yeah, and Jonathan Delaney, he's got nearly 2 laps ahead of Robert Miller now, but only just barely. I think Jonathan Delaney currently is just trying to increase that gap between himself and Bryson Hixenbaugh, just trying to make it as hard as possible for Bryson to have to work his way back through the field and catch back up to Jonathan Delaney. But Jonathan's going to be at a disadvantage. He's still going to have to come down pit road, and I have a feeling it's going to be very soon, if not this turn.
100 laps to go. Delaney just crossed the start-finish line for the 400th time on this day, as they work to get 401 out of the way. But to him and Brandon Pierce are the 2 holdouts, and that's going to be a problem for them. As you're right on the money, Mason. I think this is going to be probably, I think your original prediction of 410 might be Delaney's ticket into the pit before things are said and done. If things continue, I think you and him are on the same page.
Yeah, Oh, sorry. Go ahead,
Nope,
Andre.
nope, go ahead, Mason. You're good.
I think Jonathan is definitely one of the drivers here in this series. Quite often, we see him stay out almost later than what we expect for pit windows. It almost seems like every week he seems to extend it by 10 laps or so, maybe less, maybe more, just kind of depending on the track and depending on the circumstances. But yeah, Jonathan Delaney, definitely no stranger to just trying to hold out that car as long as he possibly can.
I think you're absolutely right. He loves these long run strategies, and it makes sense because he does have such a long run ability. I mean, again, the driver at number 9, I don't think anybody could beat him on the long runs, just in terms of, I don't know if it's the setup, I don't know if it's the talent, maybe a little bit of column A, a little bit of column
There he
B.
is.
But here he comes down pit road, locking up the tires a little bit. That was a bit of a sketchy pit road entry. But that long run speed is impressive, and I think here he was probably hoping for a yellow flag. We kind of had the trend where we were getting cautioned so frequently at the beginning of the race, but that trend died out, and it might have worked against the number 9 as he is just barely in his pit stall. I'm surprised that is legal. He's got the right side tires on the yellow paint. That was real NASCAR. That might not be legal, but hey, we're on the iRacing simulator, and sometimes you can get away with a little bit here and there. He's going to work his way out. I'm curious to see where they cycle out, because I would think that Cameron Stone and Bryson Hixenbaugh both get quite an advantage over him.
Yeah, Bryson Hixenbaugh is closing very quickly here on Jonathan Delaney. John's going to have quite the work ahead of him to be able to catch up here to Bryson Hixenbaugh. I believe between Jonathan and Bryson, there's about a 12-second gap currently now. Yeah. So kind of right now what we're going to be looking for here is either a caution coming out and the field having to restart once again, or our second pit stop here, or pit strategy here, once we get closer to probably about lap 460-ish, 470, will be our final pit window. And then, things will definitely be very interesting there. But yeah, Jonathan's going to have to work his way through the field, and I don't think he's going to have very much trouble doing so.
I think you're right on the money with the 460, 470, because you want to give yourself a chance in case you go a little bit early to, or a little bit late to catch up to the rest of the pack. But 460, 470, I think it'd be a pretty good comfort zone for just about everybody that took tires and fuel before Jonathan Delaney. But Delaney's in a spot now where he may opt to stay out further. We'll see. I don't know if that's going to be a strategy of his. I think he may have learned his lesson. He may just try to pit with everybody else and get more or less gridded back up potentially to the best of his ability. This is going to be a real interesting decision from Jonathan Delaney, especially if he doesn't make up time. He's working on doing so. He's already got to a 2.5 on 5th and 4th place. So he's working his way forward in about 6 seconds between Bryson Hixenbaugh, who is taking over the 1 spot, and Cameron Stone, who is in the 2nd spot. So things are getting a little tighter here.
I gotta say, I'm impressed with the 63 team. They've nailed the strategy so far tonight. It has been incredible. It seems like every possible strategy call they could have made, they've made it right. And it's culminated in them leading really the last quarter of this race or so. Again, I said at the top of the broadcast, the 63 maybe didn't have the car to beat, but if he could find something with the setup or maybe even pull something on strategy, he could very well win this race. And now he's kind of proving that to be true as he is made. And I think that decision to come down pit road with Jonathan Delaney when Cameron didn't, I think that's pretty much what he can credit to being in the lead right now. Meanwhile, John, he kind of faltered there. I think he stayed out a little bit too long. He's got the fresh tires. He's the fastest car on the track right now, I believe, as he's gone from 14 seconds back from the leader down to 9 seconds. But the thing is, can he catch the leader before that tire wear plateau, before his tires are so bad that they've evened out with the rest of the field? If he wants to catch him before that happens, he's got to get the move on and pick up the pace.
There's been something with Delaney's car, though, that I've been noticing coming out of turn 3 and turn 4. Every once in a while, he oh so graciously gives a love tap to that outside wall. He's gotten very close a few times. He's definitely touched it more than a few times as well. He doesn't seem to be losing a ton of speed from it, but watch his exits out of that turn. They could come real rough, and that's been that way all day for him. Turn 1 and 2 been fine. He's given himself a few inches, but turn 3 and 4 has been real rough.
Yeah, and I think that just comes down to, just how these tracks are laid out. A lot of these oval tracks, they're not quite the same on both ends. Some of these tracks, they're laid out ever so slightly different, so that way the turns are not exactly the same. It kind of gives drivers a little bit of an opportunity to kind of change their lines a little bit and make some changes here and there. But Jonathan Delaney seems to be finding a line coming out of turn 3 and 4 that just seems to kind of slide him up into the top of the wall there, but doesn't seem to affect him too much in his performance. It just seems like he's pushing that car extremely aggressively out of turn 4, and that car just wants to slide up to the top of the wall there coming out of the front stretch.
Yeah, I think that's a very accurate assessment, and I gotta wonder if maybe it has something to do with that left rear damage. I'm looking at the back of the number 9, and it is still crumpled up a bit, and an aero really shouldn't affect your car too much in terms of speed at a track like this, but we never said anything about handling. It can definitely affect your handling, and if John's feeling a little bit tight out of 4, that could be the case. I do think turn 4, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think turn 4 is a little bit, like, just barely wider than turns 1 and 2, which would mean the speeds are a little bit higher, and when the speeds are higher and your car is tight, well then, yeah, you're going to slide up to that outside wall like you mentioned there, Mason, so it could be that little love tap earlier in the race is having profound repercussions to that number 9 later on in this race. He's brought it down to 7 seconds. He's still gaining. Cameron Stone is second, about 4 seconds back from the leader, and that gap has remained just about the same the entire stint that we've had. However, as I say that, I'm looking at scoring and timing. Cameron Stone brought it from 4.8 down to 4.6, so actually 0.2 faster. Maybe lap traffic had something to do with that. Not entirely sure. But John, that time around, brings it down to 6.9, so still faster. But again, if he keeps hitting that wall, eventually it's going to come back to bite him.
Yeah, absolutely. Excuse me, go ahead, Chris.
You're good. Okay, I was to say there's quite a bit of aggression in the way Delaney's driving as well. He's moving around Raymond Root right now. He's taking the inside line of the last 3 he's gotten in front of, which now Raymond Root, who was a lap down, you had Sean O'Brien and Justin Hall, who he was able to work in front of as well as Robert Miller, who is in his rearview mirror. So that's a lot of drivers that he was able to just pass right up as he's trying to shrink this gap. Delaney, I would be very surprised if he does not make a run at this. Still 75 laps to go, and I think with him having the freshest tires of the group, I think there's a chance he ends up near the front or at the front before the next pit window.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Chris. I think at the pace that Jonathan's making right now, he's going to find himself on the bumper of Cameron Stone here probably in the next, I would say, 5 to 10 laps or so. He's closing that gap very quickly. Cameron Stone's going to have Jonathan Delaney in his rearview mirror very, very soon. And that's going to put a lot of... Yeah, exactly. It's happening very quickly. Jonathan's just putting some impressive lap times down, and just fantastic work from Jonathan. But yeah, like you said, Chris, if he's able to close that gap and able to put the pressure on these guys before that pit window, that's going to play in his favor quite significantly. But it's also going to come at a cost too, because he's going to have to worry about all the other drivers that are also kind of in this top 3 here.
Oh, wow. He's got talking about Delaney, he's got about almost half a second lap time advantage on everyone else on the lead lap right now. That's how quickly he's closing that gap. He's got it down to a quarter of a second between him and Cameron Stone.
Yeah, that number 9 is scary fast, very fitting given that we are at Halloween weekend, and the number 9 has a special black and orange paint scheme for the occasion. But man, oh man, he is right on the bumper of the 57 now. This could go one of 2 ways. Either the number 9 makes short work of the 57 and he runs down the leader, or the 57 fights back, and maybe he can't keep the position forever. But if they battle it out enough, that could allow Bryson to get a bit of an advantage. The 9 is loose, and that allows the 57 to fight back on the high line just slightly. And this is the problem with that number 9. He's been fighting loose all night long, and when he gets pinched to the bottom, sometimes that thing starts to get away from him. But he's able to make the pass. He's clear up into second now, and still, like you said, Chris, he's got the freshest tires in the field, and definitely, without question, the fastest car on the track. Can he reel in that 3.5 second gap in time to really make something of it? And does anybody, I mean, these guys should all be good on fuel. The question is, how do they perceive tires? And how important do they think they are? I mean, does anybody maybe come down just for tires? What a risk would that be?
Well, I mean, if any of these drivers are paying attention to Jonathan Delaney right now, I think they're absolutely going to account for the importance of getting on some fresher tires. Jonathan Delaney is just working his way through the field absolutely, just impressively. He's closing that gap between himself and Bryson Hixenbaugh down to nearly 2 3/4 of a second now. It's just closing ever so quickly. And if these drivers, like I said, if these drivers are paying attention, they're going to want to get on those fresher tires, and I think it's going to be sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I fully agree. It's also a risk. Like I said, anytime you come down pit road at a short track, you risk putting yourself so many laps down if anything goes awry, if things go sideways. So that could be why John played the strategy the way he did and why he stayed out so long in that last caution. So just a lot for the drivers to think about, a lot of possibilities, and about a million different ways this race could play out. I mean, right now the race looks like it's going to go a certain way, and it looks like it's kind of set in stone. But the thing is, if we get a late race caution, it's anybody's game. I mean, it completely turns this race on its head. And so really all these guys can do, it goes back to what Chris said earlier about it being a bit of a guessing game. That's really all they can do.
You're exactly right. In the last 6 laps, 7 laps, Delaney's cut that gap down to 2.5 seconds. So he is getting right into the area where Bryson Hixenbaugh is going to have him in his rear view mirror. And then we run the age-old question again. Does Delaney, at the last part of this race, run Hixenbaugh up the track towards the outside wall? That's the question that you have to ask yourself, because Delaney's been the victim of that twice. And I think it would be sweet revenge for him to do so. However, that writes a whole new chapter, like we mentioned, for next week at Phoenix.
Yeah, and lap times are slowly but surely getting closer and closer to one another, actually. Bryson Hixenbaugh and Jonathan Delaney, they're very close to one another, but Jonathan Delaney is about, actually this lap around, Bryson was able to place down just a 0.02 second lap faster than Jonathan Delaney. That's how close these guys are in lap times. Just to give you an idea of how fast these guys are going around the track, it's absolutely impressive the work that these guys are putting in. But Jonathan Delaney, now that he's in clean air and no lap traffic around him except for behind him, he's only got Bryson Hixenbaugh in his sights. So we're really going to see the beauty of that number 9 machine start to come alive as he works his way up to Bryson Hixenbaugh and try and put some pressure on Bryson and possibly regain that first position.
2.25 seconds, Andrew.
Yeah, it is absolutely down to the wire here. He got another 10th that lap. Like Chris said, 2.25 seconds. So really close. I think John still has the slightly better car, but I think we are kind of getting to that point now where we've hit that tire wear plateau. Neither of these drivers' tires are going to get much worse than they already are. So from here on out, it may well just come down to driving ability, who's better on the worn tires. And that's the thing, man. It is a completely different skill set to drive on worn tires than it is fresh tires, because it entirely changes the characteristics of your car, how it responds to certain inputs. And the thing is, learning how to drive a car in the long run is one of the most difficult things to do, because, well, to learn it, you got to put in a lot of time. You got to get to those long runs. You got to practice and turn 500-600 laps at a track just for a few long runs to learn how the car handles. John obviously is very good at that, and it's a skill set that seems to be definitely in his tool bag as he continues to close the gap 1.8 seconds now.
Yeah, Hixenbaugh actually got loose there as he hits into pit row. That'll give Delaney the lead. So our first casualty on these tire wear is Bryson Hixenbaugh, and that could be the play to do it. And he's going to end up going about what ends up being 65 laps on fresh tires at this point. That's not a terrible way to do it. Even if you have to run on slightly worn tires, he may start a domino effect to the rest of the racers on the lead lap and even further back.
Yeah, that quite possibly could be the case here, but I think what Jonathan Delaney is going to do here, as his last pit lap was 405, he's pretty good on tires for now, and I think he's going to stay out on track as long as he possibly can. And by the time that Cameron Stone's able to get back on track, it's Bryson Hixenbaugh as well. As by the time these two are able, by the time Bryson was able to get back out on track, he's going to find himself down a lap, and that's only going to increase as the race continues on here. And Jonathan's going to have to find himself into pit road eventually, but by the time that happens, I foresee that Bryson Hixenbaugh could be down even further from where he's at, but only time will tell.
Only time will tell, indeed. It's a game where a lot of these guys are just completely playing different strategies, and it's interesting because a lot of times when one guy pits, it sort of starts this domino effect where they're like, okay, well, the leader pitted, I'm no longer at as big of a risk pitting now, so I can pit too, and then they come in behind him. But the thing is, I was expecting Cameron Stone to follow in Bryson's tire tracks there, come down pit road the very next time, try to get that undercut on John, because at this point, if we stay green, that really would be his only hope of cycling out ahead. But Cameron is staying on the track alongside John. Neither of these drivers have pitted. Bryson is the only one among the leaders that made that trip down pit road. So with that being said, if these guys come down pit road after too long here, I mean, we're on lap 450, approaching lap 451 right there. So we got 50 laps left in this race. If you come down pit road with 40 to go, maybe you don't have time to make use of those fresh tires. So do you guys think maybe... Oh my goodness.
Oh,
my
no,
goodness.
Bryson.
That is not good.
Oh, what happened is the question, but Bryson Hixenbaugh is now going to be locked up a lap down.
Looks like RJ Root, Brandon Pierce involved in that front straightaway incident. Luckily, I don't think Bryson's going to be trapped a lap down. He was only one lap down, and he was the first car a lap down, so he may be lucky dog.
Ooh,
Take a look at the 3-wide PV replay, and the 38 just makes a little bit of contact with the 8 right there, and unfortunately unable to save it. And then 38 makes contact a second time. Man, those guys might have magnets in their cars because they came together 2 individual times riding on board with the number 38. There's the first contact. And then as they come out of the corner, I think the 38 tried to make a preemptive maneuver to avoid him. Didn't expect him to slide down the track, but he did. So,
Stone and Delaney in the pit.
Just a gentle push, but yeah, as you said there, Chris, we got Stone and Delaney down pit road.
Interesting developments happening here at Martinsville Speedway. Guys, lap 453 of 500. And man, this is like you said, Andre, like you said, Chris, this could be anyone's race at this point. It's pretty much take everything that we talked about fuel, about tires, and throw it out the window. That is all irrelevant now. Everything just comes down to raw racing now. And yeah, we are going to see some very exciting laps here being put down. Yeah, guys, this is definitely shaping up to be quite the interesting final few laps here at Martinsville.
Well, and you mentioned it's going to come right down to raw racing. We've mentioned on a number of occasions that Bryson Hixenbaugh does not have the fastest car on the track right now. Everything has been Jonathan Delaney coming up aces, and Cameron Stone's been pretty good as well. And he's got fresh tires to work with, so it could come down if Cameron Stone, as we get them gridded back up, is able to get in front of Bryson Hixenbaugh and in front of Jonathan Delaney. Stone's had the best restarts the entire day by far on every single restart that we've had. So it's going to be a matter of the last 55 laps or so, or 45 laps is going to be them chasing down, I think, Cameron Stone if he's able to get that same restart.
Well, that's true, but also John's going to be the control car, which does give him a slight advantage because pretty much in any given circumstance, he'll be able to be the first car on the throttle. So maybe Cameron stays side by side with him, and then it's a battle there. But it'll be interesting to watch. And I can confirm, I believe Bryson was the lucky dog. He didn't have to take a wait around, so he was able to pit, and he's going to be able to start right behind the leader. So, man, we got some fast cars all starting right with one another up front, and not many laps left. That's a recipe for disaster. They always say cautions breed cautions, and I think that's going to hold true here because Cameron, you know he's not going to let this opportunity slip through his fingertips. He is going to drive this car as hard as humanly possible because he knows that mistake he made not coming down pit road earlier in the race kind of put him on the backslide there, and now he's got to make up for that, and this is his perfect opportunity as the lights are off on the pace car.
Yeah, this will be a great opportunity for him to do so, and Delaney holds the key He's got to get on the throttle, and then Cameron Stone. So Stone can't get over anxious here. This is the first time today he started in that 2 spot. So this is Delaney's restart to pace it at his will. And here we go.
Wheel spin from the 57. He falls back nearly 7 car lengths. Sorry to cut you off there, Mason. He's side by side with the number 8. Huge wheel spin out of the 57. And that's going to put the 65 car up into second place.
Yeah, that's definitely not what you want to see there for Cameron Stone, as he's going to be in 3rd place now behind Sean O'Brien Jr., which the 65 of Sean O'Brien hasn't quite been out in front of the field as quite as often as he'd probably like to be. But here he is in 2nd place with Cameron Stone right on his bumper coming into turn 3, going out of turn 4. Quite the battle happening. Oh, Cameron Stone just gets a little too close to Sean O'Brien Jr., almost seemingly giving him a little bit of a love tap there, but able to keep it clean. Cameron Stone taking the low line coming out of turn 2, sticking it out in front of Sean O'Brien. Now he's on the chase to catch back up to Jonathan Delaney for these final 40 laps here at Martinsville.
Now, I don't want to go out here making any accusations. That is not my job as a commentator. However, it would appear that the 65 brake checked the 57 on the straightaway. They were halfway down the straightaway, and I saw the 65's tires smoke up like he slammed the brakes. The 57 hit him pretty hard. I think that might have been O'Brien's way of retaliating for the contact in the corner. But all fairness to Cam, I mean, it's go time. You know, there's not many laps left. He can see that number 9 driving off into the sunset, and he's got to get around Sean O'Brien if he wants a chance at getting John. So he put the bumper to him, and that's kind of the racing you expect to see here at a short track.
The issue you're going to have, though, is now you have Cameron Stone, who is going to be fighting some dirty air back there, back in traffic, and Jonathan Delaney way out in front. He's about 2 1/10 seconds ahead of Cameron in that 2 spot. So with Cameron just getting in to some clean air in front of him, now is when how much does Cameron make up, because he keeps losing time. He's lost 0.4 of a second in the last 2 laps. Talking about Cameron Stone to Jonathan Delaney.
Yeah, and looking at their last lap times as well, Cameron Stone is not that far off from Jonathan Delaney's pace. He's about 0.02 of a second off from Jonathan Delaney. So I really don't think that Cameron Stone's going to have too much issue catching back up. It's just a matter of if Cameron Stone's going to be able to hold on to that line and be able to stick out and be able to catch up to that number 9. But as he gets a little bit closer and closer, we're turning more and more laps here. Only about 35 laps left to go here. Things are going to be shaping up very, very quickly here.
Cameron actually took the high line on that turn. I don't think he intended to. We'll see if he corrects it on this one, and he does. So he'll lose a little bit of time. I think he doesn't like taking that high line very often, but a little bit of inconsistency going into that's turn 1 and 2. He had the high line on the last lap.
And I think Cam has a little bit of damage on the front end, because when he hit the 65, when the 65 stopped on the straightaway, that was a hard hit. I mean, I could see the rear tires of that 57 just about lift off the ground. I mean, the suspension had completely risen up to its maximum extent there. But with a hit like that, you know you're going to be taking some damage. I think he's fighting tight, because I've been watching this 57 all race long, and before that, he always looked loose, always looked real free. Now, that car looks like it's just fighting him through the corners. You mentioned he's about 0.2 off Jonathan Delaney, and I think a lot of that comes down to he's got to slow down a lot more in the corners due to this damage.
Who's catching up to Mr. Cameron Stone is one Bryson Hicksonbaugh. He's got Sean O'Brien between them right now, but Hicksonbaugh is doing really well to close down the gap to the best of his ability. So Hicksonbaugh may not be done with this before this day is over.
And only 31 laps left to go here. Things are shaping up very, very quickly. And laps are turning quicker than we can see them happening. But our producer says that we have a replay available, so let's take a quick look at that.
So there's the first shot going into the corner. Cameron Stone just gives him a bit of a nudge. Now watch when we get on the straightaway here. There's a second nudge coming out of the corner. Now, on the straightaway, if the camera catches up to it, you're going to see this 65 car right about there. Just slams the brakes. That's a little bit early for the braking zone, I would say. I don't know. Maybe not intentional. Maybe he was just trying to make sure he didn't overshoot the corner because he had cars behind him. He didn't want to overdrive out of panic. But yeah, got on the brakes a little early, and it was pretty hard contact. I'd say that had to damage the 57.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think he was able to avoid any damage from that contact, even if it was relatively minor. But hopefully that doesn't affect the 57 too much here, as he's in second place still, trying to catch up to Jonathan Delaney here. Still about 2.25 seconds between themselves. Man, Cameron Stone definitely has a lot of work to put in here with only 23 laps left to go here. It's gonna be it's gonna be a fight to be able to catch back up to that number 9 machine and be able to regain that P1 position.
You mentioned that Cameron Stone has some work to do, but I think that a little bit of love from that 65 car may have inadvertently sabotaged Cameron Stone's ability to catch up to Jonathan Delaney, who has very little damage on his car. And Cameron Stone, with that front end kind of smushed in a little bit, he's not going to be nearly as aerodynamic as he would be normally. So he's going to have a hard time catching up to the laser that is Jonathan Delaney into these corners. And you gotta, I think there's not going to be any Christmas cards sent between the Cameron Stone and Sean O'Brien households. But Bryson Hicksonbaugh, looking at him, he is right on the 65 car currently, and Bryson Hicksonbaugh is trying like hell to get past Sean O'Brien, but O'Brien has played some very good defense to this point. They've been going back and forth for about the last 7 laps, and Hicksonbaugh cannot go inside or outside on Sean O'Brien. He is playing spoiler to this car, and Hicksonbaugh has a faster car, so it would seem.
And rivalries kind of are the running theme here at short tracks, but it is worth mentioning that Cameron Stone and Sean O'Brien, they are not strangers to one another. And actually, it seems like the last 2 times we've come to a short track, those guys have kind of gotten together. And the thing is, it's always been unintentional. Like, I don't think, at first when I saw that, I thought, okay, maybe the 65 brake check, or maybe it was retaliation. Watching the replay on the 3Y TV replay, I don't think it was intentional. I think he was just trying to make sure he didn't overshoot the corner, because you do that all the time. You have somebody behind you, and you're looking in your mirror, and then, oh, here comes my braking zone. I just missed it. Now I've overshot the corner, just like he did right there. But he was trying to prevent that. He wanted to get on the brakes a little early, make sure he made the corner, and I don't think Cam was prepared for that. So it was an accident. It was completely just a racing deal. But it's like the second or third time these guys have gotten together at a short track. And yeah, just really unfortunate. I mean, nobody to blame, and sometimes that's the worst situation, because you want somebody to blame. You want to say, oh, that guy did me wrong, or blah, 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 blah. But no, it's just a situation that was 2 cars, same real estate, unfortunate for both of them. But at the end of the day, it was to Jonathan Delaney's advantage, as he is now 3.5 seconds out front from Cameron Stone. The battle between Hicksonbaugh and O'Brien pretty much over, as O'Brien did overshoot the corner. I mean, he's up ahead of him by about 3 seconds, 5 seconds back from the leader. Question is, can Hicksonbaugh catch up to Stone and maybe try to make a move for second before the end of the race?
Probably.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see what happens for Bryson Hicksonbaugh. We only have 19 laps left to go here, so if he's gonna make something happen here, it's gonna have to be very, very soon. And given the gaps between these guys, 3 seconds, 2 seconds might not sound like a lot of time, but when it comes to racing, and when you only have 18 laps left to go, that can be very challenging to close. And I don't think it's going to happen very soon for these guys. And it's with how consistent these guys have been racing in this state and in this final stage here, banking on a caution coming out here with 18 laps left to go, I don't think that's going to happen. These guys have raced very consistently here since our last restart. And yeah, I think the field is kind of settled out to where it's going to be here for these final 17 laps.
Noticing Hicksonbaugh is sending his tail a little bit in towards the outside wall on turn 1 and 2 going into the straightaway. So I'm seeing that he's trying to be a little bit more aggressive and get some extra speed. He's got a lot of clean air around him, so there's a chance he could catch up, but he's running out of laps to do so. And it's a possibility, but I'd say probably 30 to 40% chance he's able to even catch up to Cameron Stone at this point, let alone pass him.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. Again, the paces are so similar, and there's only 15 laps left, which here at Martinsville, 15 laps is going to pass real quick. And That's exactly what Jonathan Delaney is hoping for. The last thing he wants to see is a surprise yellow flag at the end of this thing. Actually got a little bit of mock up there. We got a replay top of the 3-wide TV multicam. Or no, not a replay. That is live. It's number 1 in the 09. These guys are battling it out for, not for position. Hickenbottom is 4 laps down. Hall is 1 lap down. But nonetheless, having some fun racing with one another. Going in through the corner there. The 1 has some pretty good center speed, but the 09, a lot of speed coming out of the corner and down the straightaway. I got to think some of that may be due to Dustin Hall's damage. He did get quite a bit of damage earlier in the race, an incident there. That'll take away some straightaway speed if it's bad enough. But Brandon Pierce there in the 44, Randy Drumhiller, these guys are battling it out as well. So we got some duels all over the track.
Yeah, there's a little bit of duke outs here and there throughout the field, but mostly it's been quite contained for most of these guys, as we only have 4 drivers that are in the lead lap, so anyone that's kind of competing against one another is just kind of competing for positions when they're down a few laps or down just 1 lap. But either way, these guys here in the top 4, man, it's very, very interesting to see just how much distance has kind of come between these guys here in the front of the field, and just how much distance is closed between the guys in the back. We're kind of seeing, the back of the field kind of competing closer and closer to one another, and the front of the field is just farther and farther apart. A very interesting dynamic here, I think.
9 laps to go. We're just past the 491 mark, and they're working on 492 as we speak, and there's still a second and a half between Hicksonbaugh and Cameron Stone, I should say. The gap between Stone and Delaney has closed just a bit, about 3.5 seconds there. But again, I don't know that there's enough time. But Cameron Stone seems to be catching a little bit of a second wind, as Delaney's tires are giving him lap times over the 20-second mark.
And Delaney has a little bit of lap traffic to contend with as well. That could be a part of it. He just worked his way around the number 53 of Preston McRae, as well as Chad Sanner in the number 6. Those are cars that Cameron will be dealing with within the next couple of laps here. So kind of evens out. But I think you're right, Chris. It's a matter of time. There's just not enough laps left in this race unless we were to really get a yellow flag, or unless Jonathan Delaney made some crazy mistake, which I don't think we're going to see. So right now, if I'm John, I'm just telling myself, hey, take it easy. We've got this thing in the bag. No need to overdrive. No need to risk the whole race. Just take it easy. And if he does that, he could very easily walk away with the trophy or the Martinsville clock tonight. And if I'm Cam, well, I'm throwing stuff out the window. I'm trying to get a caution. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're Cameron Stone right now, you're chucking every single loose object that you have in that car out the window, trying to get the field behind you to screw up a little bit, as we only have 5 laps left to go here. And guys, what a long race it has been, and we've seen just a number of things change the field quite dramatically, and especially in this final half of stage 3. Man, this has been an interesting race. At the beginning of the race, it seemed like Cameron Stone was the guy to beat, and now that's kind of changed here. The tables have turned, and Jonathan Delaney is leading the field here very strongly, just the same as Cameron Stone was here at the beginning of the race. 3 laps left to go here, 2 more before we see the white flag come out, and these drivers wrap up their race here at Martinsville.
Preston McRae, I'm noticing, was one of the lapped cars that Cameron Stone just went by. He was getting loose in some of the turns, just fishtailing just a little bit. He was able to keep it together, but that's all it would take for Cameron Stone to get the caution that he needs to be able to catch back up and get a green-white checkered out of this. But at this point, we are right in the tail end, and white flag coming out this time by.
Absolutely, the white flag is in the air for Jonathan Delaney, and he has a 3.6 second gap, a little bit of lap traffic in front of him, but that's all right. He can take it easy, working his way through 3 and 4, through a very up and down race. Looks like the number 9 is going to come out on top. He's going to win here at Martinsville. Already punched his ticket to Phoenix, but he just doubled down on it. He's going to take home the trophy. Cameron Stone going to cross the line in second. Bryson Hicksonbaugh had just gotten to him, but not enough time. He's going to finish third. It looks like fourth place is going to be Sean O'Brien Jr. Then you got to look back to the cars that are laps down, but we'll get to the full run, finishing order once everybody has crossed the line. But yeah, what a wild race.
Through and through, this one has been up and down, left and right, all over the place. Martinsville, for the 100% Cup Series, has been an absolutely thrilling race, and gotta say for Jonathan Delaney, an impressive one at that. Having locked himself in for Phoenix, coming here today and making a statement, winning today's race, going into next week, Jonathan Delaney's got to be feeling pretty good for himself.
Agreed. We've seen a little bit of everything today. We saw some good pit strategy that was completely thrown out the window by the caution on lap 440. We saw the love taps between Bryson Hixenbaugh and Jonathan Delaney that put Delaney up towards the top of the wall. But patience was a virtue for Delaney, and something we don't usually see from him as much, as Andre alluded to. He was patient. He got back into this race. He did not waste a really good car that he had by retaliating against Hixenbaugh, and he ended up winning the race because of it. And Cameron Stone, who dominated a majority of the first part of this race, did not necessarily have a great second half and third stage. They were not great for him. It was a lot of fun to see the other drivers be able to take hold of what Cameron Stone gave up.
Absolutely. And before we get into our post-race interviews, just going to quickly run through the official finishing order. As Jonathan Delaney's driving the car around the infield. Don't see that very often. Look out for that track official there, John. Final running order. Jonathan Delaney takes home the win. Cameron Stone second. Bryson Hixenbaugh is going to round out the podium. Sean O'Brien Jr., he needed to win this race to move on to Phoenix, and he's going to come up just a little short there in fourth. Last car in the lead lap, but a commendable effort and a great drive by Sean. Top 5 is going to be rounded out by Robert Miller, 1 lap down. Raymond Root behind him. Brandon Pierce, Randy Drumhiller, Dustin Hall, Damaris Hickenbottom, Preston McRae, Chad Sander, Kevin Steele, Ryan Samuelson, Alex Princeton, Dave Fugue, Brian Mabry, Jason Taylor. And when the graphic scrolls down a little bit further, we'll get the final, I believe, 3 drivers that were left in the grid. There they are, Tyler Pinsino and David Duke. We're not going to forget him. There he is, there in P20. Now it is time to have a word with our top 3. If we can find them in their chats. We'll start out with third place Bryson Hixenbaugh. See if I can pull him in here. Bryson Hixenbaugh, you got a copy?
Yeah, I got you.
Well, Bryson, you had a really good car out there today. Definitely top 3 speed, and you did bring it home on the podium. You really nailed this strategy out there today. You made a lot of great pit calls. Tell me about your race.
Yeah, I was clearly a third fast car out here. Cam and John were way faster than me, so I knew I needed to make some strategy calls to win it. Just before that long green flag run there, came in and pit, and Cam stayed out. I just knew I needed to do something different there, and if he pit, I was going to stay out and see what happened. Worked out, and the way that the run was going, the 2-stop strategy I think was going to work out. So I came in that second time and I was pacing him down. I knew I wasn't going to hold off John when he was catching up behind me. The only reason he didn't pass me earlier was because he had so much dirty air behind me the whole time, and he had clean air on that set of tires, so he was going to chase me down and pass me.
And speaking of the battle between yourself and Jonathan Delaney, we saw a couple times here in the booth the 63 machine giving a couple of love taps to Jonathan Delaney. Was that part of your strategy, or were you just kind of letting him know that you were there?
I was just sending him the message that I don't like him. I've told him this. I've told him this multiple times. He should know by now this, but he still keeps joining the race chat with me, and I don't know why.
Any conversation between you and him after those love taps occurred? Not once, but twice?
Nope.
Oh, man.
That was more or less what we expected, yep.
Yeah, I kind of figured that. Well, Bryson, before we let you go, I want to congratulate you on the podium. And is there anybody that you would like to shout out or thank?
I'd like to thank Robert Miller and the guys in Nexus. I was using the setup from the spring. They did a good job on it then. Got me the win that race. Made some adjustments this week and got it.
All right. Well, again, congratulations on the podium there, Bryson, and good luck next week.
Thank you, guys.
Bryson out of the booth. He's pretty blunt about it, guys. I'm not sure how he feels about John, but I think I get the hint. Man.
Yeah, he's not doesn't cross me. He doesn't cross me as a guy that pulls many punches.
Not really. He's pretty straight up. He tells you what he thinks. But all right, moving on to second place. This is a driver who may not have much to say. Cameron Stone. Cameron Stone, you got a copy?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, Cameron, definitely one of the fastest cars on the track, if not the fastest. Race kind of came down to strategy and a few unexpected cautions. Just kind of a very unpredictable race. Tell me about it.
Well, I think there was can't remember when the caution was, but about 3:30 or so. We'd only had about 12 green flag laps, so I decided to stay out. Everyone behind me pitted. Bryson and John had the better tires, so they got around. And as soon as I lost the lead, it's a completely different car. So, I mean, I'm not sure why aero blocking is a thing at Martinsville, but I don't get paid enough to make those decisions. Yeah, it was bad break, caution coming out at that time. Made the wrong decision. Not the first time I've done that this year. Seems like we're allergic to victory lane, but car ran good. I did everything I could do, so it is what it is.
And now I feel bad for poking fun about the last race there, Cam. We'll have to hash that out on the podcast, and it'll be the Cameron Stone apology tour on DNQ next week.
I ain't apologizing for anything until after Phoenix.
All right, go ahead, Chris.
The last caution, I believe it was, just after that caution, you had a bit of an altercation with the 65. A bit of a brake check on that back straightaway, or so it would seem. Or back, I think it was back straightaway. Either way, did that change the way your car ran for the last 35 laps and more or less stop you from catching up to Jonathan Delaney as you were a little less aerodynamic with the front end solution a little bit?
Yeah, John kind of waited really late in that restart zone to go, and I think it was the first time I restarted on the outside, so I spun the tires there, lost the spot to Sean, and he got in front of me, and blocked me one time going into one. Then I tried to lay back and get the run off of 3 to get him into 1 again, and he just, moved down in front of me at the last minute. And I don't know if he just probably had a different braking zone than I did going in there. I don't know if he was brake checking me or not, but 45 laps to go, especially him being the guy that punted me from the lead in May. So not really my job to cut him a break there.
Fair enough.
Absolutely, Cameron. Now, I got to ask you, too, having led the majority of the race in the first and second stage, having come into the third stage and having to kind of work your way through the field, what was kind of your mentality going into stage 3?
And the only thing I had going into stage 3 was go fast, try to get to somebody's bumper in front of me. And, the way the drafting and everything is working this season, it's, if you're the car behind, you're automatically at a disadvantage, no matter really how fast your car is. I mean, you guys saw as soon as John got the lead, he just took off and left. So we never saw how quick his car was until he got clean air. And a really weird thing is, it doesn't seem to affect you as much if you're the leader catching lapped cars, but if you're in second place catching anybody, you're dead. So we'll file that one in the old memory bank when we start working on next gen stuff next year. But can't fault John. He ran everybody pretty respectful all night. I mean, him and Bryson got into it a couple times, but he came back from it. So kudos to him for winning the race. Just kind of disappointed that it wasn't me.
Bryson did not leave a stone unturned as to his feelings on that particular incident, on those particular incidents in the interview just before you. So understood there. But congrats on the second place, Cameron.
Thank you.
And before we let you go, is there anybody you'd like to shout out or thank?
I got to shout out Mom and Pops for watching. Megan and Conrad always watch too. Appreciate you guys. Bryce Hoffman, Matthew Norcutt, and Carmen Pruitt in the living room. Sorry, I guess I'm washed. Biscuitville, shout out to Biscuitville. I had some Biscuitville this morning, kind of set my day off right. That was nice. Thank them for being on the car. Maybe we'll bring them back next year. Yeah, we're on to Phoenix.
All right. Well, thanks for your time, Cam, and good luck next week.
Thank you.
Cam Stone out of the booth. Now it's time to have a word with our race winner. Let's see if we can bring him in here. John Delaney, you got a copy?
I do, yes.
Well, John, you played your cards right. I mean, that whole race, you were painfully consistent. Everybody else seemed to make one minor slip up here and there that ended up costing them, but overall, you made all the right calls when it comes to strategy. You had the car with the pace to win. At the end of the day, you brought home the trophy. Tell me about it.
It was a long race. I will say that it was probably one of the hardest races of the year for me. Hardest wins to get for sure. I started from the back, just I was a little challenged. So I knew that would be interesting. Work my way up through the field. I knew I had a fast car. I just didn't really know how good till I got in that clean air at the end. There's literally nothing you could have done in the dirty air. It's just impossible. There's no words to really describe it. You're just instantly slower. And Cam he had that clean air just about the entire race. So the only way, to get in front of him was to do something like pitch strategy or something like that, and that's exactly what I did. I was able to pass him with those fresher tires in him. We had that green flag pit stop. I played that well as well, and I was able to have the lead going into that last caution there, that last green flag run, and I was able to really show how fast the car was in clean air.
Absolutely, John. Now, given that you're currently the point leader and are locked in for next week at Phoenix, having come here today and won today at Martinsville, what's kind of your thought process for next week? What are you kind of expecting for Phoenix?
I think it's going to be a really good race. I think you're going to see the exact same thing, like me, Bryson, and Cam, probably just real close to each other. And I'm sure if Adam was in this race, he would be close to us as well. I was doing some laps. It's a nice track. It's a fun track. I think it's going to drive a bit better than it did earlier in the spring. So I think it's going to be a really good race for the championship. I don't think there's really going to be anyone that stands out. I think there's definitely going to have to be some strategy involved to win it.
So I'll be the one to ask the question of the hour, I suppose. Your interactions with Bryson today, less than ideal. You were able to come back and win. You had two close calls with him. Give me your assessment of the situation and how you were able to kind of put that in the back burner and be able to drive a really good race car, which you had most of the day, to victory lane.
I don't have too much to talk about it, but the fact he did that and still lost to me is it's interesting to say the least. But,
take another victory lap.
It is what it is. He was, I'm assuming, just getting some frustration out, but it is what it is.
Okay.
All right. One last question for you, John. Do you think all those wind decals weighing your car down gives you an unfair advantage?
I mean, maybe it just gives the rear end more ballast, so I'll have to make sure to set up the car a little tighter for next week.
All right. Well, before we let you go, John, is there anybody that you'd like to shout out or thank?
Thank you guys for broadcasting. Shout out to Admins for this league. Ralph Hutchison for the last minute adjustments on the car. He did a really good job at getting it to where it should have been. Everyone at Lockdown Racing, Anthony Alfredo, Maconi Setup Shop, SimSeats, Sparko Gaming, MPI, Garage Guys Fantasies, Dude Wipes. Shout out to everyone at home watching, mom, dad, brother, grandma, Tanya, Bob. That is all I have.
All right. Well, congratulations again on the win. Good luck at Phoenix, and we'll see you next week, John.
Yeah, thank you guys. Can't wait.
Race winner out of the booth, and man, what a night it was. Martinsville is just one of those tracks, guys. It just never disappoints, and I would have to say that tonight was about all you could ask for. We had strategy, we had straight up battling on track, a little bit of everything, but that is going to do it for our post-race coverage. But again, I'm Andre Graham Bush, joined alongside Chris Curtis and Mason Heimbach, two of the best in the business. And of course, producer Carlos Costa, pushing all the buttons, bringing all the action to your televisions. Thanks for tuning in, and be sure to tune in next week for the championship finale, where the champion will be crowned at Phoenix.